Thursday, February 20th meeting of the Water Quality Management Committee will come to order. First thing on the agenda is Kurt Felix, who is Mr. Aquaculture in Wellfleet and parts beyond there. And we're very happy to have him here. They've been cutting edge in this field for a long time, and we're right behind you, but we want to know what you're doing, and we'd love to have a conversation. So.
Well, I'm delighted you invited me in, and John deserves a lot of credit for all this stuff because he was the one who, several years ago, when I said, John, you're from Wellfleet and you're on the Falmouth Wastewater Committee, you know a lot about this stuff. What would you do? And he said, grow oysters. And
you need to use the microphone.
Yeah, good idea.
Oh.
Yeah, we have a large television audience that
you can pull it
watches
right
this
out
stuff.
of there.
So you're right.
there we go.
You'll be on.
Fantastic. So again, thank you very much for inviting me, and credit to John Waterbury for sort of stimulating the idea some time ago as a former Wellfleet resident, being pretty familiar with the area and what our problems might look like. They're a lot more complicated here in Falmouth, unfortunately. But so anyway, I've got a little bit of a presentation. Much of this was given to the Cape Cod Water Protection Collaborative, and essentially this is our results from the last 3 years of working on a pilot project, a 2-acre pilot oyster project. We have used sea clam shell in that 2-acre area, and we chose an area that John pointed us to in a way. He said, kind of your main problems are probably going to be in the Mayo Creek, Duck Creek area where you have your highest population density, and the drainage area is all coming from those two tributaries to this location right near the town pier. And as we sort of canvassed a number of locations, that's where we ultimately settled on this particular project location, mainly because of those reasons, and also because we could sort of look at it very closely and it had a lot of high visibility, being able to see it from the pier and so on. So over the last 3 years, we've assembled quite a partnership. Our water quality work is being done by the Provincetown Center for Coastal Studies. We were able to get a USDA grant a couple of years ago to help with the water quality analysis and also with the biological assessment work that we're doing at the location. Environmental Partners is a consultant who's been working with the Wastewater Committee on our committee's Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. The Wellfleet Oyster Fest, the famous crazy party that happens in Wellfleet every year, has also contributed money to the effort. Cape Cod Cooperative Extension is providing us an uplink for data from our YSI real-time water quality meter. So that's available on the website, on their website. UMass Boston is actually doing the biological assessment work. Massachusetts Oyster Project has contributed money. And the Cape Cod Water Protection Collaborative has recently jumped in and is helping us, again, with the biological assessment and water quality work, as well as providing some funding for culch. And NOAA actually is a sponsor through Oyster Fest. NOAA's actually been supporting our shell recycling operation at Oyster Fest. We've actually recycled about almost 20 tons of shell from Oyster Fest, which is about 50% of the solid waste that actually happens at that festival over the 2-day period. So this is our main restoration vehicle. We won a Mass Recycle award for kind of this whole program. It's a combination of shell recycling that comes out of the Oyster Fest event. We also are recycling shell because we're using clam shell as our primary habitat restoration approach. The sea clam shell allows the naturally spawning spat to set on it. So we get a wild set. We actually get a natural set. And the sea clam shell turns out to be one of the best substrates for actually attracting a fantastic set. Mm-hmm. So we recycle sea clam shells from a facility that's off Cape. Those come in. And that contraption is also recycled. It's a sander, just a regular road sander, mounted onto a barge that the DPW donated to the shellfish department so that our shellfish constable would have this particular way of being able to get the material from the town pier out. We actually collect shell throughout the wintertime at our transfer station. And then in the springtime, we begin moving that with a front end loader into a dump truck. The dump truck delivers it to the town pier and dumps right into our vehicle here to take it out to the flats. So I think, and frankly, if you look at restoration programs elsewhere in the country, I think this is not only novel, I think it's really ingenious. And these guys deserve a huge amount of credit for putting this together. It's way more efficient because you've got a drive that can deliver the shell out of a hopper right to where you want to put it, as opposed to many of the other places. For example, in Chesapeake Bay, they'll take a big barge, they'll take fire hoses or shovels or some other way of trying to get the material off the barge to put it where they want to. This does it much, much faster, and the layer of shell that you get is actually much better because you're not just simply flinging shell out into the water. It kind of goes down in a stream so that you get a nice round shape, which has, it's off the bottom, so you tend to get a very good set. It's a much better approach. So this is what our site looked like in 2011 after we had done our first application of culch, putting out sea clam shell. And if you're interested, you can actually also see this from Google Earth. It's actually visible. If you go and look at Wellfleet Harbor, you look at the town pier, you'll see these white ribbons around the town pier, and you'll see them elsewhere in the harbor. And those are the archetypical profile or visual indication of where that sea clam shell has ended up, because these ribbons are in fact very visible. So this is just the biological assessment work that goes on. We, every 2 weeks, do about a half-meter quadrat assessment of counting everything in that quadrat, and then moving to a variety of different locations to assemble our data over a summer collection period. This is kind of, again, what the sea clam shell looks like as the tide's coming in. One thing I want to point out on this slide, if you look closely at the lower right-hand green area, typical ulva, sea lettuce, some people call it, typical evidence of eutrophication in the area. And we were beginning to see a lot of that in the Mayo Duck Creek area, not only before we, for a period of time before we started the project, and then immediately after that first year when we had applied our first round of culch. This is to give you an idea of what happens, the natural set that occurs on a sea clam shell in the right-hand area there, the little black spots. That's natural oyster set that has set on that shell. And from there, it will then grow into be adult oysters. And there's Anna Maria Frankic, who is our biologist on the left there from UMass Boston. This is actually Mark Borelli from the Provincetown Center for Coastal Studies, and one of the other elements of our project, in addition to the water quality assessment work that I'll show you in a minute, we're working on a population assessment tool using side scan sonar. So he's actually developing, he's got a couple of side scan units that he's been doing mapping work in Wellfleet Harbor, and this is just simply a ground truthing exercise of taking out some very high-resolution GPS equipment to locate an area. We then count that area very closely and use the actual data to try to true up and get the computer software to give us a good resolution on what the population actually is. So we've got all this fine data that comes back, and that data then is interpreted and converted into actual population. So that's a developmental piece of the project. This is actually his boat with the front tow. You can see the side scan sonar unit up front. The red areas are actually areas that he's mapped already. Within just a couple of days, he can cover an enormous amount of the harbor. The image on the left is what the side scan sonar image looks like, and you can kind of see the sea clam shells on the right-hand side, those ribbony, sort of stringy ribbons to the right. One of the things that was kind of interesting is, and this has become, I think, part of what we've tried to focus on in the Cape Cod 208 process, is not getting too focused on silver bullets, and really thinking more broadly about not only the ecological restoration elements, but the other impacts that could come from salt marsh restoration in addition to aquaculture generally, not just oysters. And of course here you're working on the eco-toilets and a number of other technologies. But I think this all-of-the-above approach is really something that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I found interesting in sort of looking at the nitrogen impacts of different habitats, if you look at salt marsh on the left and you look at the seasonal characteristics, in the winter and in the fall, in the winter and the spring, salt marsh tends to be a little bit low, and then toward the summer and fall, you'll see an increase in the level of nitrogen that salt marsh is tending to remove. Oyster reef or oysters in general tend to be highest in the summertime. And one of the things that I found important about that is that's actually, if you look at our nitrogen cycle, where you want to be getting the removal. There's not a lot of excess nitrogen in the wintertime. So, if you look at exactly where the problem is, these natural features actually dovetail precisely with when that problem is tending to occur. And it kind of only makes sense. I mean, they're geared to use nitrogen. That's what they live off of. This is nutrient, not pollution, and that's what they thrive on. So the other thing that we had looked at quite a bit was how much work has been done in the Chesapeake Bay area, which is quite a bit further ahead of the New England region in terms of oyster restoration. And of course, the Chesapeake Bay nitrogen problem is quite legendary. Chesapeake Bay, at about the turn of the century, was filtering the entire body of the bay with its oyster population in about a couple of days. Today it takes about 400 days because of the loss of the oyster population. So those are kind of some interesting historical footnotes. Population is at about 1% of historic levels. But the other thing is, despite the aggressive effort at sewering, working on the agricultural outflows that do flow into Chesapeake Bay and so on, very aggressive program to work on nitrogen, they haven't been able to meet their TMDL levels. So a lot of effort, a lot of expense. And I would say probably about 15 years ago, people began to get much more interested in oysters as a possible approach as well, and starting to think beyond the land to what the nitrogen sinks are. What's missing in the ecosystem as well. If you look at salt marsh as another example in Massachusetts, so if we're at about 1% of our historic levels of oyster population, in Massachusetts we've also lost about 65% of our salt marsh. And when you look at just those two habitat features, and if you imagine just taking out those sponges, it's not surprising that the estuaries are seeing, well, for example, if you put a little bit of Miracle-Gro in some sand, you can grow lots of plants. It doesn't, a little bit of nutrient in that type of an environment will sustain a lot of vegetation. The other thing that I thought was interesting about this particular slide was they were looking at different approaches to reach their TMDL levels in the Chesapeake Bay and looking at the cost implications. And this is from about 2003. And as they were really identifying even back then, that's almost 10 years ago, that enhancing oyster populations may cost less than other options. One thing I think is really important to make clear for the public and as a in thinking about this problem, again, nitrogen is not a pollutant, it's a nutrient. And shellfish doesn't remove nitrogen. It's basically like cattle or sheep grazing on grass, and the grass in this case is algae and other things that are in the water column that they tend to filter and use as food. So they're just filters, and they filter the entire water column. We've had a lot of discussion, and I think that's happened here in Falmouth too, around this idea of aquaculture versus reef, and sort of what's the best approach? Is there a better approach, or what are the differences? If you look at the right-hand side of this pie chart, that's what it. And basically, this is a combination of a lot of different scientific studies, but that's a pretty good number for what an oyster will remove for nitrogen. So it's about 25% of the overall nitrogen that's available in this system. Another 25% actually comes, so that's what ends up, for example, in the shell and the meats of the oyster. The lower right-hand quadrant is basically a secondary process when the oyster eats. It packages its discharges in a mucus, And that mucus makes things available in the bottom of the benthic materials, such that bacteria can work on it and actually create nitrogen gas. So there's another process by which nitrogen is removed through oysters, and it's the secondary gassing off of nitrogen. So if you leave an oyster in the water, you're going to get both of those pieces. If you harvest the oyster, you get at least the right-hand quadrant. If you leave them in and you do habitat restoration, and you've got something that's not being walked on and not being harvested with splitting off oysters and making singlets, in other words, when you have a clump and only one oyster is of harvest size, somebody will chip off the harvestable one and leave the remainder. So that process actually breaks apart these oysters in a commercial setting. So you don't tend to get as many organisms moving in. It's not as attractive to other things. If you let it grow and let it do its thing, oysters will agglomerate onto themselves, and they'll make structure that'll start to look like coral reef. If they're left to go for a long time, Samuel D. Champlain was credited with saying when he came into Wellfleet Harbor in the 1600s that the oyster reef was literally sticking out of the harbor, and he was uncomfortable going into the harbor because it looked too intimidating. So that's kind of what we used to have, this feature that's now gone. But anyway, if you let it go to its natural state, the other organisms that come in are credited in many scientific studies as possibly having as much as another 50% nitrogen removal from those pieces. But again, if you look again at just the right-hand upper quadrant and harvest oysters, well, as a nitrogen removal strategy, that strategy is paying us money. We're not paying for that. Those oysters are generating money in the open market, and those farmers are basically doing the nitrogen removal for us, and they're getting paid. So it's not costing us anything.
Two quick questions. Size of the oyster that's 0.375 grams is associated with?
Typical of an adult.
So 3 inches, 4 inches, 3.5 inches?
3 inches.
So a 3-inch oyster, and is that a wild oyster or is that a cultured oyster?
Diane Murphy and Josh Reedsman had done some really interesting work for at the cooperative, and the Cape numbers there's a little bit of difference, but what I've tended to take away from most of the literature that I've reviewed and a lot of the different studies that I've seen from different areas and focusing on these differences, aquaculture, a cultured oyster versus a wild oyster, they tend to be fairly close. And more importantly, from a sort of a policy level of thinking about things, at the end of the day, whatever we've got out there is going to do something, and we've got to measure it and see what happens, because I don't think we can really predict in any given location exactly what's going to happen.
So that's like an average number from a bunch of studies? So this is sort of a combination of a lot of different studies. Okay.
Sort of if you want to put bands around it, it's they're not that great on what the oyster meat and shell actually hold for nitrogen. Where it gets a little dicey is once you start to look at the secondary cycle, because it depends on what's actually in there. Right. And then if you look at other organisms, well, the other organisms on Cape Cod are going to be different than Chesapeake Bay, and they're going to be much different than they are in Florida. So those are going to be different. So this is our project area, the 2-acre area looking from above. This is the town pier in the foreground, and this area is literally just off of a group of cottage colony of condominiums. We have a YSI meter at the very end of the pier. If you look down at the very far right-hand corner, that's real-time water quality monitoring, and then we've got a grid that I'll show you later on, which actually is very, very micro sampling of water quality in the area to try to look at what the oysters are doing. This Duck Creek area is again the area where one tributary comes in and another tributary. Duck Creek is actually a working salt marsh. Mayo Creek, which is the other tributary that comes in, is a heavily degraded former salt marsh. It's got a duckbill on the end of it and really doesn't get very much flushing. So we've got these two features in the area which are, have actually provided some interesting scientific analysis out of it. If you look at the top right-hand corner, that was the original site after the first application of culch, and you can see the ulva sea lettuce. If you look at the next slide on the corner on the left, from 2012, we didn't see any ulva the following year, which kind of just blew us away. But as you know, ulva kind of comes and goes, so it doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot, but we were kind of surprised, and it really didn't return. In 2013, after another application of culch, again, we didn't see any ulva in the area, so we were seeing at least some good visual indications that we were really helping to reduce the nitrogen. And the population in 2011 was probably about, a couple thousand oysters. By 2012, we had gotten up to almost 3.8 million. And at the end of our biological monitoring this year, we're at about 4.4 million. So we've dramatically increased the oyster population.
So the tide comes in and covers that.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't die with that exposure.
Right.
And you've done no harvesting. You've just allowed accumulation.
Correct. In this location. However, with our culch program, we're also culching throughout the harbor. We're probably putting down about 9 times as much culch for eventual commercial harvest as we are in the restoration side of it. So overall, we're shooting for, our big picture plan is to do about 140 acres. And of that 140 acres, about 126 or so would be available for commercial harvest, and about 16 acres would be set aside in reef, in other words, a no-take zone, trying to reestablish the natural feature. We've applied to the Division of Marine Fisheries to allow us to do that. That's not currently allowed under the Commonwealth of Massachusetts regulations. Any area that isn't closed for health reasons has to be open at least every 3 years for the taking of commercial shellfish.
What's your tidal range?
Our tide range is about 10 feet on average, so about a
Would
8 to
anything
14.
change if you had no tide?
Well, if we had no tide, then we would have the oysters would still survive, but they would be, quote, subtidal, so they would be growing constantly underwater. Oysters tend to like the intertidal; they like to be in both the air and eventually flooded again. They seem to do better in that type of habitat, but
But they don't freeze.
they will freeze, but it's funny. The flats, when they're exposed, and you'll see an oyster, if you touch it or hit it, you often kill it. But it can freeze and then recover on its own, even down to temperatures as low as what we get in Wellfleet. I mean, it's kind of amazing.
We'll find out.
This is just a catalog of what we're looking at for biological species in the area. I think the real essence of this is that we're just tracking the fact that biodiversity is increasing, which anybody would expect in the area. More on biodiversity, looking kind of closely at it, and also what we're getting for densities per square meter from our oysters. And one of the things that's different about what we've seen in our pilot project here compared with Chesapeake Bay is they typically are seeing oyster densities at about 100 to 200 per square meter. We're at probably about 600 or 700 per square meter, and right now that seems to be, for whatever reason, Wellfleet, we can grow a good oyster, and they seem to thrive, and we're not really seeing any issues in terms of having that type of a higher density. More photos of what the spat looks like on the upper right, and then this lower right-hand corner is what reef starts to look like. I mean, that's actually, that's clearly not something you'd see out on the flats in a commercial area. That's more indicative of something that would be like an oyster reef. This is our water sampling grid. Again, the Provincetown Center for Coastal Studies is gathering samples by hand every 2 weeks. And they've been doing a microgrid analysis. These green dots that you see are each of the sampling locations. And I'll just kind of describe it, but the upper 3 green dots are actually the area where the oyster reef is. So that's 3 spots almost directly over the oyster reef. If you follow up to the very top of the photo, there's a little red dot in that narrows, which used to be a railroad bridge. That's one sampling point. If you follow down to the beach where those condominiums are, we actually have water sampling at 15 feet and 30 feet at that particular location, but not of the seawater, but actually a freshwater well. And that well also happens to have a clay layer that separates the two, so we're kind of getting more of an indication of what our surface water quality is flowing into the area, as well as the subsurface, what might be coming in from the aquifer. We got some nice separation and some kind of interesting things that came about. The red dot on the left, that's the Mayo Creek outfall. And if you notice, that's a red dot. If you look at the chart here, down at the bottom right, that's an indication of severe degradation in terms of nitrogen. Mm-hmm. Same thing coming in from the Duck Creek side where the railroad bridge is. Again, you can see severely degraded water. Our samples on the beach, the freshwater side, are also severely degraded. And these samples are taken, as I said, every 2 weeks. They're taken on the outgoing tide. So water is flowing out of the area, and they're always consistently done that way, and then consistently processed at the Provincetown Center. The net of it is that if you look at all the areas in the oyster area, they're actually showing close to excellent water quality. And it turns out when you look at the numbers, they're actually lower in nitrogen than these other green dots, which are actually water in the harbor. So we really have a clear indication from the data that we're seeing a sinking effect. I mean, if it was dilution, the numbers should be about the same as what they are in the harbor, and they're not, they're lower. And they're handling a huge amount of inflow of severely degraded water.
Is this water body impaired? Is there TMDL for it? Or?
No, we don't have a TMDL yet.
Yet?
And hopefully we don't get one. But also this area right now is actually would be in compliance.
That's what I was,
So, if we had a TMDL, we'd be in compliance.
But without the oysters, it wouldn't be in compliance.
Without the oysters, I think it's. I'll show you. We've got some more data, but we wouldn't be.
For looking at Google Earth, also south of the pier, there's an area that has a lot of the same kind of pattern. I don't know what it is, but it looks the same as your area.
Oh, Chipman's Cove. Yeah, that's heavily. This area here is pretty heavily farmed. I mean it's commercially open.
The reefy-looking lines and things.
Yeah, I'll show you another chart where we have those. We've been putting cultures, as I mentioned, all over the harbor in various locations. Chibben's Cove is another area that we've been putting shell down, and then I've got a map later where we've got it elsewhere in the harbor. But this is kind of interesting. If you look at the center, let me do this. Oop, those don't show up as well, but. Basically, if you look at the square around T1, T2, and T5, that's the oyster location. So if you look at the kind of the average nitrogen levels in that area, and again, these are averages throughout our sampling period, and you compare those to the well, we call it the duckbill pipe, which is Mayo Creek, and Duck Creek, you can see that they're significantly lower. This other data point, YSI, to the left, is another very, very low point. Has been consistently low. That's actually at the outermost flow of the oyster reef. That's actually about the last point where the water is flowing out of that area. What you can also see is that in 2013 we had significantly higher nitrogen levels coming into the area, and even though we had much higher incoming nitrogen levels, we were still able to maintain something that was pretty close to the EPA Excellent Water Quality Standard, which is what that red line is. So we had, again, very, very good removal. This, again, just looking at the differences between years, the blue is an indication that in 2013 we had significantly more nitrogen coming into the area.
Why'd you put total phosphorus in that? Is that what TP means?
Yeah, Amy wanted to do that as well. She wanted to, look at. She's looking at a lot of other water quality parameters. Phosphorus is not something that oysters are noted for being effective at removing. John may have more insight on that than I do, but in terms of what algae do. But anyway, that's. Looking again at the line up above is basically what the total inputs were on average, and the red bars are kind of what we're seeing for levels in the oyster area. So what we're seeing is effectively somewhere between about a 50 and maybe a 70% removal of nitrogen from the oysters. Another interesting one is looking at chlorophyll, and even though the nitrogen levels went quite significantly in 2013, we actually saw pretty low levels of chlorophyll, which is another indication that the oysters are getting more mature. We're getting older oysters, and they're probably filtering more. So even though the nitrogen levels went up, they were able to filter the chlorophyll out of the water and keep the chlorophyll levels even lower than 2013 or 2012. So again, that's the oyster propagation area. So as you can see, 13, the chlorophyll levels are lower. Again, this is differences between years. I'm not going to go through that. This is kind of a little bit more interesting, but a comparison of chlorophyll levels at Cape Cod stations that the Provincetown Center has been sampling. So McMillan Wharf, Pamet, Wellfleet Harbor, the Oyster Site, Rock Harbor, Sassuat, Plymouth, and Duxbury Harbor. And the Oyster Site was one of the lower ones in that group of samples from around the Cape. And clearly, several of those other harbors are quite heavily impacted and do have some level of eutrophication. This is the map I promised I'd show you earlier on about where else we've culched. So you're right. If you look at the red areas in just to the south of the pier, that's another area that Andy's been putting out a lot of culch. So this is our culch that went out this past summer. Over off of Indian Neck, which is just a little bit further south, you see some red lines. Essentially, when he goes out now, every time he does a run, he has a GPS unit and he hits start on the beginning of his run and stop at the end, so we can track them, not only to show them graphically, but also it's a way of allowing us to figure out how much tonnage he put out. Because every run we know effectively what the hopper holds, and we can actually calculate what's gone out. And it just helps us true up with what we're supposedly getting from our contractor that's delivering shell. So we at least have a check and balance on trying to figure out what's going on. These other numbered locations are the proposed oyster sanctuary locations in Wellfleet Harbor. So if you see up in the upper right, number 1 to the left, 7. Number 7 is at the outfall of the Herring River, which is the subject of a very large marsh restoration project, one of the largest ones in Massachusetts. About 1,100 acres total, probably about 890 acres potentially of salt marsh that will be restored. Number 6 is on the west side. That's an area of the harbor which back in the 1800s, there's reports of somebody harvesting 26 million oysters in 5 tows. On that side of the harbor. Today, our entire population harvest is about 4 to 6 million. Over on the right-hand side, number 2, 3, and 4, that's the Black Creek outflow. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we're targeting these locations for water quality purposes as much as anything else. So we kind of we focused on placing them where we've got outflow from densely populated areas. And we kind of tried to put them as far up into those densely populated areas as we thought was, made sense, given how muddy or mucky the substrate got. If it got too mucky, we were just not comfortable putting shell down there because we knew we were going to lose it. It would just get absorbed into the muck. So DMF is.
So those are no-take zones proposed?
Yeah, these are proposed no-take zones, and all but number 6 would have video surveillance as well. So we're planning to do video surveillance. DMF has preliminarily said that they're likely to approve this concept. We don't know with what conditions or how they'll want to constrain it or whether they'll approve all of these locations. But they have indicated they're going to grant us the ability to move forward with this proposal. So that's kind of exciting.
So each one's a couple of acres, because you said a total of 16 acres.
Yeah, each one's actually 2 acres, except for number 1, which is a little bit bigger. The other thing, actually, in sort of trying to have a number of people review the data one of the reviewers said, do you have any MEP data historically that would look at, I know you've got this, you think you got this sink and you've got these numbers from incoming flows, but what if it's really just dilution? And do you have anything that would sort of give us a comfort level of what it looked like before you started doing the oyster restoration? And we actually got pretty lucky. There were 2 points that we had actually done MEP data collection prior to doing the oyster restoration. And if you look at the upper left-hand chart, there was, again, this is the work that Amy had done, but there wasn't really much difference between 2006 and 2013 in nitrate and nitrite in that area. So in other words, oysters aren't obviously removing nitrate or nitrite. And that's not really that surprising because that's the dissolved nitrogen component. Ammonium was a little bit lower in the later years, but not really all that significantly. But if you look at the bottom chart here in terms of total nitrogen, there's a dramatically lower difference in total nitrogen. And also in chlorophyll, compared with prior years during the MEP survey. So this to us was sort of, we're getting confirmation from a lot of different coordinates that, that the theoretical literature that's been developed about oysters for the last 20 years, which would predict this kind of thing, that we are actually able to see it at in this larger macro setting, and in a relatively short period of time.
Have you had any poaching problems?
We really haven't. And one of the things, we had some initially. There used to be some people, and occasionally, somebody who comes in from out of town and doesn't understand the shellfish regulations anyway, things will happen. But most of, I think, what the compliance ends up boiling down to is people who are out there who know. And it's more self-compliance than the constables. The constables have a very large area to police, but we've got a very responsible group of shellfisher folks out there, both the aquaculture people and the commercial permit holders. And if they see somebody where they're not supposed to be, they will get all over them. And that's your best form of policing anyway.
How about disease?
Disease is something that, I've been in public meetings where we're presenting this before, and people who know oysters say, well, you're going to get a disease outbreak and they're all going to die. And that's what oysters do, they die. One of the things that I think that pie chart shows you is that if you have a natural structure, you can lose all the oysters and you'll still have at least half the nitrogen removal from other things that have in-migrated. So it's a much more robust dynamic than just simply aquaculture. If you lose all your aquaculture, yeah, you've lost it for that year. But again, this is a nutrient from a seeding operation. Most folks who have a grant are going to get right back out there and get going the following year. And your oyster population will recover too. We're actually pretty hopeful on the disease front because there's some indications from the work that's been going on in Maryland that they're actually seeing much lower levels of disease in their oyster populations. And they attribute it, and again, who knows if this is true or not, but they attribute it to having a much larger amount of restored oyster reef. And they claim that as they've increased their amount of oyster coverage, both through reefs and through commercial aquaculture grants, and brought back the population, that they're seeing among the highest levels of spat set, in other words, reproduction, and also much lower disease levels. So I think it's too early to kind of say that that's conclusive, but they're seeing some pretty positive indications.
If you had to normalize that, would you say 90% survival rate would be reasonable, or higher or lower? I mean, if they die all in 1 year,
it's hard.
Doesn't that happen?
It's hard to say, Jerry, what will happen to the adults. What we see from spat to adult is usually about a 50% mortality. So usually about 50 to 80% before they reach adulthood. Then once they reach adulthood, for the most part, they've been harvested at 3 inches. So we don't have adults that are 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 years old. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that adult population. The other thing that we felt real strongly about in terms of having this the restored habitat, the reef, the no-take zone, whatever you want to call it, we call it propagation zone. The idea is And the shellfishermen kind of get this. It's like put some money in a bond, put your money in the bank. Don't take your account, don't harvest your account, but harvest the principal. And so the idea is to keep these little areas going as
Maybe the interest.
Harvest the interest.
yeah, harvest the interest. Did I say it the other way around?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't eat the principal.
Right.
Leave your principal there. And they kind of get that. They know that if there's too low a level of population, and Division of Marine Fisheries has been very supportive of that argument too. There's some population below which you just don't have any sustainable population any longer. But we've seen some indications from genetics work that's been done in Wellfleet and from disease work done elsewhere that if these oysters are allowed to go through what the locals will talk about as a cyclical die-off that tends to happen every 7 to 9 years, some major crash, that we will tend to get more disease-resistant oysters in the population. It's the best way to have Mother Nature do its thing in terms of getting the more disease-resistant ones in the future. Work that's been done to try to breed them in, for example, at the University of Maryland, it's had mixed results. It's kind of hard to get something that's disease-resistant in the lab that's going to be disease-resistant in that local environment where the chemistry may be very different, the diseases may be different, the temperatures may be different, and so on. So there's a theory or a school of thought that local disease resistance is pretty
We
important.
bring in oyster right now, every year, so, and we bring it, I forget who the supplier is, so unless you have a reef system, you're not going to have this ability to get disease-resistant oysters because we're getting a new crop in every year. Or there's a spat or something like that.
Yeah, unless ARC or the other hatchery is working on disease resistance, and they may actually come up with something that's resistant also. It's not that you can't do it in the lab. It's just that the results have been kind of mixed.
I think that if we look at the oyster aquaculture experience on Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, it's been very stable over the past 20 years or more. And that's because of what Kurt just said. In the hatcheries, particularly up in Muskogee and Maine, and even ARC, they check for diseases before they're released. And we can't even accept them without them being clear of disease. And then in addition to that, even moving them around, as we found out, that you can't move them without having them checked ahead. So these businesses have been in business for decades. And I talked with Jack Blake on the vineyard, who said that one year he did a shortcut and he suffered for it. It took him 2 years to recover his commercial operation. But since, he's been following very strict guideline. And I think that if that's done, it's about, there's risk with every technology, every system, and this seems to be stable at this point. It doesn't mean it won't be something, but it's pretty stable.
Steve.
I want to make sure I understand the basic principle here. You use the culture to get your reef initially established, and then the growth of the oysters increases it. And then if you harvest at a sustainable rate, presumably from the top of the reef, you maintain a given size of reef?
Yeah, we're actually planning on leaving certain areas as no-take, so we won't harvest them at all. That 14 acres that I was talking about before.
So they get bigger and bigger back to the 16.
Yeah, that we're gonna let that 2 acres do its own thing. And the main reason is as I was saying earlier, when you walk on it, you break it up, so you actually lose that structure. It's kind of like throwing an anchor on a coral reef. It's just not healthy in terms of the long-term knitting effects that will go on and the structure that will develop. We want that 3D structure because that's what actually creates an environment for protection of juvenile fish and for other things that are going on in that reef. In fact, one of the things that I think has kind of been missed around the oyster piece with Division of Marine Fisheries is we've had catch limits on our fishing stocks in Cape Cod Bay for quite some time, and they've had, our stocks are still way down. And one of the reasons that, according to NOAA, is that about 80 to 90% of our fish require this salt marsh reef habitat for about 1 to 2 years of their juvenile period. So it's a very important nursery ground. We don't have those nursery grounds, certainly to the extent that they used to exist.
But even in the areas where you do have commercial harvesting, in principle, you could have a harvesting rate that's steady state.
Exactly.
So in both cases, you don't have to add more culch. You're only adding culch to expand your acreage.
Right. Once you get to it's basically a shell budget. Once you get to a neutral shell budget, in other words, if the rate of growth of new shell equals the rate of harvest, the amount of shell surface area that you've harvested, you could theoretically maintain a population, but notwithstanding, the other element is you may have population crashes or other disease outbreaks or other things, but theoretically that's what they're shooting for in the Chesapeake Bay, is at least a neutral shell budget.
I've heard old shell fishermen talk about oyster reefs in Wacoit Bay, and should we assume that there were oyster reefs in all of these estuaries and bays at one time?
Yeah, it's the Ernest Ingersoll's work actually showed that the extent of oyster reef around Cape Cod Bay, Massachusetts, was just amazing. Now, in answer to your specific question, I don't know. I have to go back to the report and look closely at it. But by and large, oysters were a major feature of our coastal ecosystem that has been harvested completely out.
Who was that source?
Ernest Ingersoll.
Ernest.
He did a 10-year analysis of the oyster industry from Maine to Texas. He spent 10 years, traveling all over the place.
What century?
1880s.
Thank you.
And
Took them a century to
yeah,
look
it
up.
took a long time.
Exactly.
That document, though, it's at MBL's library. There's a copy of it, the original at MBL library.
Wow.
And anyway, he was the one who cataloged this harvest of 26 million in oysters in Wellfleet Harbor, and pretty much there were oysters everywhere. I mean, it's just amazing. He interviewed all the local farmers, the harvesters. He learned what the harvest prices were, what methods they were using for harvest, what areas they were harvesting, what they thought were the ups and downs of the industry, and so on. And it's a searchable document online, so that you can actually look for what was in Falmouth and get some indication from that what was around. And of course, Dr. Belding had done some more. I don't know if Belding's work includes Falmouth, but there's some pretty good historic references.
I know where the town marina is in Falmouth Harbor. The previous owner was Cape Cod Oyster Company or some oyster company. So it's not like ancient history.
Right, and you have Oyster Pond in West Falmouth, which was oysters until they put the railroad through, and then it became too.
There's a lot of oyster
fresh.
ponds that don't have any oysters in them anymore.
Right. I have one question. Do you have any problems with red tide? Does red tide kill the oysters or just close the fishing for a period of time?
It just closes the fishing, and it got close to Wellfleet a couple of years ago, but didn't make it in.
Okay, thank you.
And it doesn't kill the oysters. It's just harmful to us.
Yeah.
Earl. Yeah.
I'll ask this one because Ron was out of the room when you said it. You showed us a diagram that said denitrification was most active in summer when we had most of the problems, but not much excess nitrogen in winter time. Whereas in all of our meetings so far, we've assumed that it's coming down year-round, month by month, more or less the same.
Yeah, that's not consistent with the Center for Coastal Studies data, which shows a very, very distinct seasonal increase in nitrogen. And this is from their station, their stations throughout Cape Cod Bay. They've got an offshore and a nearshore set of data points. And what you see pretty clearly is that nitrogen levels in the water start to go up about March, and then they go up quite significantly throughout the summertime, and that they then tail off, and they go down, into the wintertime. So that's the data. The data is pretty clear that the amount of sampling that she's done and the amount of points that have been gathered, I think are enough to be pretty conclusive about what the pattern looks like. And it's not flat. There's nothing linear or flat about it. It's And to me, it makes a lot of sense too, that you're gonna get a lot of in-migration of nitrogen from everything that's coming in. All our waterfowl come back, all our fish come back, the whales come back. If you think about what's going on in the marine environment, a huge amount of, nitrogen producing animals are coming back into the environment that weren't here for the winter. So there's this natural, and the other thing is, I'll get in trouble now. The Cape Cod Commission keeps talking about, this 80% of the problem is septic systems. And what they mean by that is that 80% of the nitrogen, what they consider controllable nitrogen is coming from septic systems.
Yeah.
But if you look at a lot of the scientific reports, at nitrogen, for example, in Wacoit Bay, there are a number of studies on Wacoit Bay. It's somewhere between 30 and 40% is probably coming from septics. But the other 60 to 70%, and that's just Wacoit, is coming from something else. In Wellfleet Harbor and some of the other, not Wellfleet Harbor specifically, but the other places that were in the survey analysis, as much as 97% of the nitrogen was natural in origin. So it wasn't coming from people. And so somewhere between probably 40 to 97% isn't us.
No, it's just, so basically you're saying then that the problem is really just during the summer, just from what we're seeing in terms of the loading in Wellfleet at least. And that's when the shellfish are active, right? So they would be dealing with the problem at that time. And the other is, that's an interesting point to look at. I think we may have a different situation with some, I don't know if all areas are the same, and some of these finger estuaries or inlets that we have may be more dominated by septic systems where they are, which is what the analysis should be showing. I mean, I don't think it's a cookie cutter that just describes everything.
No.
So it could be that we have a different.
I want to follow up on what Ron said because I absolutely agree. This is not cookie cutter. And you need very specific information both on your geology and on your habitation practices, and because as I remember, Wellfleet goes times 10 its population in the summer. Falmouth doubles, maybe triples, but we have a much heavier year-round population. And when you were describing the geology, we don't have a confining clay layer. We have continuous sand. So you really have to look at it estuary by estuary. There is this fond hope that it's just a summer problem, but you don't have a TMDL set yet. We do. That's a legal standard we have to meet. I think it's very encouraging that we have a biological activity that helps peak at the time when there is more nutrient available, but we just have to be careful that we don't mislead people that it is, in fact you use the word that it's not a silver bullet, that it's part of the picture, but you have to look at the whole picture.
It's also why I think it's important to focus on again the oyster reef itself, because it's not just about the oyster. When you start to get a natural habitat, it's got much more resilience. And when you couple that with what used to be there as well, salt marsh or other features, that becomes more robust. And if, lo and behold, we get enough water clarity to start to see eelgrass recover, again, you're simply recovering a more and more and more robust environment.
Have you derived any figures on weight per acre per unit time, removal of nitrogen by any of your reefs?
We're working on that, actually. We're trying. We can quantify it. We haven't done it. In terms of the tonnage. I mean, we know how many pounds of nitrogen, for example, the nitrogen removal rate.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't care. I can convert the units.
This is removing about. I've got it. I've got a whole slide on it. I didn't bring that, but I should have brought the cost slide. Jerry's seen it. But basically, this oyster reef is removing about 2,000 inhabitants worth of nitrogen, is the best way I can put it. I can get you I'll send you the slide, but,
Yeah,
you know,
let's
get
do.
you the
And
tonnage.
it's how many acres?
2 acres. So that's good for about 2,000 people. The culching activity, which is outside this reef, is probably removed about 9,000 inhabitants worth. With the combination of our oyster projects and the Herring River, we'll be in around the 25,000 inhabitants worth of nitrogen removed.
Wow. How many inhabitants do you have?
3,000.
Year round.
Yeah, it's 2,700 year round, and we're 18,000 in the summertime.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
6,000.
So it's all over, you're done?
So,
When you say per acre,
Yeah.
we're growing them in bags, and I guess we measure them per acre, but I would think the removal is a little bit different. You know, we'll probably go to per shell in meat and whatever else. Because, you know, when you say per acre,
Yeah,
what do we have, 2 acres out in?
We had an acre, well, we have 2 acres.
Oh, we're gonna go to 2
We're
acres.
gonna go to 2 acres.
Yeah,
But
we-
we're doing it by numbers of oysters.
yeah, exactly.
It's a
We
totally
do-
different
yeah.
metric.
A lot of the scientific literature talks about removal per acre, and that's a really bad way to do it because the densities are different. The oysters themselves may be different. The
And it's a
oysters,
3-dimensional acre as opposed to a,
yeah. I mean, it gets very confusing. I know how much an oyster. I can measure exactly how much is in an oyster, and there's very, very good scientific work on how much the oysters, pseudofeces cycle removes for nitrogen gas. So for those two components, that's very, very well grounded in science. And so we focus on per oyster. Our calculations are per oyster.
Well, that makes sense scientifically, but the per acre is the bottom line because you have all this mortality and of individual oysters in different sizes, different depths into the reef.
Yeah, that's why we focus on population. That's actually why we're developing the population tool, trying to work on that, because we feel population's the real thing to focus on, because it's really how many oysters you have out there. That's what your removal rate's going to be based on.
just a couple other points. One is that on the seasonality issue, you talked about nitrogen going up. Well, there's another dimension to it in that it appears from what we've seen, and we're doing some measurements, we hope to be doing more, on that in the winter, most of the nitrogen would be in a dissolved form, in the form of ions, nitrates, nitrite, ammonia, and less as particulates or plankton, because you get warmer water, then you get the growth, and then we get the problem. So that's another element to this that I think needs a little more work. The other thing too is that I think that, I'm not sure, are you finished with your?
Yeah.
Okay, I just have one more point. In looking at the oyster reef concept,
Yeah.
I think we may have a real opportunity in Falmouth, almost an immediate one, to look at this, not within our program necessarily, but looking at Great Bay Road off of Great Pond, on the west side of Great Pond. Because if the oyster reefs were put in, we're getting serious erosion there. And if the oyster reefs were built up there in this way, and they grew up, as I said, coming out of the water, they may break up the waves and thereby help through biologically at the same time doing this type of work for the town. I mean, the oyster's doing this kind of work for water quality improvement, so it could be an important I think idea.
We actually put in a grant. Some people may be aware. We put in a grant with the National Fish and Wildlife Fund opportunity that just expired in January. And we put in a proposal that would include a regional element. Part of it would be to increase the productive capacities at the 2 hatcheries, in our region, so ARC and on the vineyard, and also allow the towns, any town that wants to get spat on shell, to be able to do that through this program. So taking the existing Barnstable County aquaculture program and adding basically a 0 to the amount of oysters that they can produce and make available to the towns. So that's something that, if we're fortunate enough to get that grant, would allow Falmouth, and I know Mashpee is very interested in. Rick is, Rick thinks he can probably take just about all of it, but
He would if you let him.
and he probably could.
We're nuts.
But anyway, that's an opportunity that we're trying.
He advised us to go mussels. Do you think we were in?
When will you hear about this grant?
End of April.
End of April. I'm sorry, and the source?
It's a National Fish and Wildlife Fund.
Okay.
Sandy resiliency. And the reason I was thinking about it is because Ron just brought up the coastal element of cutting down on erosion and storm surge protection, and that was really they were specifically looking for oysters in that particular grant opportunity as something to be considered. And we have a couple of elements that would look at the amount of storm surge mitigation and erosion protection that could come from some of the work that we're doing lawfully.
Listen, this is a good time to mention we got Chuck Martinson off to the side here. He's been away at school for a long time, but he's back, and he is our shellfish guy in this town. And I know he's been following your presentation and your progress with great interest. And make sure that he'll be here later to talk about our own, what appears to be a relatively minor project. Yeah, Earl.
Yeah, I had one more about the muck. You said you don't drop the shell in the muck because it disappears. Have you ever tried to just keep pouring it in until it sticks up 3 feet to see what it happens?
We could.
We
In fact,
we have muck everywhere.
Yeah, I know.
Like a big pile.
Usually what people do in that situation, in the Chesapeake it's a problem too. They've tended to take concrete, break it up, and throw it down first. To try to get something in there so that you don't have, so that you have something that you can actually get something on that would actually not sink in.
Have you heard of the Conservation Commission?
Yeah, I have. In our case,
Not to mention Division of
I'm
Marine
just-
Fisheries?
I'm just telling you, this is
Scientifically,
this
it
is
would
what
work.
they're doing in Chesapeake Bay, to try to overcome the problem. And what we have is, in our location, we actually have a lot of muck. When we started out, there are areas in there that we had thigh-deep muck. This is at our propagation zone site, the pilot site.
Yeah.
What we're seeing is that, that the muck level is receding. It's going down, I think, partly because when you get a lot more filtration, things get stirred up. As the muck gets stirred up, the oysters filter it. And, I think the oysters are actually helping to reduce the muck. They also filter everything in the water column out. So instead of getting an algae bloom that dies off and creates more muck, or ulva that dies off and creates more muck, or any of the other macro and micro algae that are doing that, and vegetation, dead vegetation as it's coming out of the estuaries in the fall, all the stuff that's circulating that ends up becoming muck, oysters are tending to filter. So it's not surprising to see that, and we are trying to document more how much of a muck level reduction we're getting out of the project.
You mentioned a duckbill valve. Is that a one-way valve to prevent flooding in some creek?
Yeah.
Are you happy with it?
The funniest thing about that is what a duckbill is it's a piece of pipe, and the pipe gets smushed together to look like a duckbill. And it basically only lets water out. As soon as you get any hydraulic pressure on the other side, when the hydraulic is the same, nothing's going to flow the other way. And so they're awful. They're a clapper valve, at least, that opens up and would allow for drainage. So when Woods Hole Group did the analysis on Mayo Creek, what they found is that after about a 3 or 4 inch rainstorm, just taking the duckbill off would get you drainage in a couple of days. With the duckbill on the way it is now, the drainage behind, the flooding that's occurring because of that amount of rainfall, takes about a month to finally get out. So it was a really bad idea.
Say no.
Oh, well. Any other comments or questions? Earl had something? Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the opportunity, and we're comrades in arms.
Yes. Set the bar
Would you
pretty
come
high.
out to Westport? If I...
See ya.
While the audio visuals are being dealt with, let me point out the presence once again of Mark Forrest from the Cape Cod Conservation District, and I think I can tell the rest of the world he's a candidate for county commissioner, which is a terrific thing for Barnstable County, in my personal opinion, and we might find some other people who agree.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've worked with Kurt for quite a while, and I'm pleased to see him here. And he's obviously doing some great things in Wellfleet, and I think the fact that he's sort of taken the initiative to work on a proposal that would benefit the entire region and the county is certainly something to be applauded, and I hope to continue to work with them in whatever capacity in the future, but to help, sustain this effort and keep it going.
Yeah. Terrific.
And I can't say enough about my work with Mark. We've had a long time working together and had some very, very, I think some very good things come out of it, and that will continue, I'm sure.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
So does he get what he needs to get back to Wellfleet with?
He's
Gonna stay. All right. All right, next item here is discussion and vote on the 2014 shellfish budget. Chuck, you might want to be at the table for this one.
That's not last time.
Yeah, it's slightly changed, but not much. We have a microphone, I hope. Okay, so yeah.
Move it over.
Yeah, I'll take that one.
Well,
See if he has anything to say. Okay, do you want to
Sure.
spell this out here for us?
Sure. I spoke to the committee 2 weeks ago, just presented the general concept that we had done some analysis based on last summer's experience with the project through Department of Marine and Environmental Services, and the committee had voted a budget based on some planning numbers, but based on the real experience of last summer, we did some adjustment after talking with Chuck's group and the harbor master who actually ran the project last summer, and realized that there were some staffing needs that hadn't been accounted for in the planning numbers. So we came up with a budget for 2014 that is, I'd say $30,000 more than the original planned number. And I sent around the budget Tuesday with the agenda, and it really, the main features of the addition are hiring a project manager for the full duration of the project from April, when it really does need to start, until November, when we're doing the relay. Accounting for an additional 1 million oysters that are going to be relayed. Accounting for additional patrolling, because now we have shellfish that have been relayed into growing areas, but they have to remain closed until they go through a spawn, or season and a spawn. And that puts them into the next opening, which is, I believe, going to be October 1st or sometime early October for West Falmouth, and then December for Green Pond.
December, yes.
December for Green Pond. So with the additional need for patrolling.
2015.
2014. 2014.
That's
So,
an important
yes,
change.
2014.
I thought that was so.
Yes.
Okay.
So big things are planned for October 2014. Stay tuned. But I think for now the budget is really based on the real need for real feet on the ground. So I would recommend that we make that increase.
Okay, is there a motion?
Just a question. In Wellfleet, they just talked about using video cameras
Oh,
for the monitoring.
surveillance.
Have we ever even
Yeah,
checked that
It
out?
was actually something that I had brought up.
Give him a mic here.
He's got a mic.
He has it on.
Okay, good, thank you.
It was something that I had brought up at the onset of this project, was using video cameras, actually. I think part of the thought is that we wanted to try different areas to see which areas were the most successful, and then perhaps we could move to using more video surveillance. But at this point, obviously we've got now 2 places in Little Pond that we could potentially be growing in. And we have currently 2 sites that we would be relaying to, and possibly 2 additional sites. So that would be something that certainly from an enforcement perspective, I think in future years we would want to consider, not as the sole enforcement, but is an additional tool to use. And I think that most likely the Division of Marine Fisheries would be inviting about that.
So start in some future year?
This year we have the first relay that's going on, as everyone knows, to West Falmouth and then to Green Pond, and then we're going to do an additional, next year we're going to meet again and possibly talk about perhaps Quistit and another location as well. So whichever areas are the most successful, perhaps we could look at supporting infrastructure if we wanted to go long-term with this. But it does require a power source. It requires, cameras, monitoring in our office. We are set up to monitor surveillance. We do it throughout the town. Not all over, not extensively, but at our boat ramps, primarily at the boat ramps. So it's something that I think we could easily accommodate. Something that the group wanted sooner. We could certainly look into it.
But you have to have somebody there monitoring, or you must have tapes too.
No, what it does is it records on a reel for approximately, I think, 2 weeks at this point. So if there was information that we need to go back on it, there's essentially two types. There's one type that actually shows a large picture of what's going on, and then there's a plate reader which would read an actual license plate number for a theft. So,
Does it work at night?
there are cameras that work in the evening. Yeah, they've come
Infrared?
very far in surveillance.
They're wireless,
We
they
know.
have motion detectors, and they're under $1,000.
We read the papers.
I see.
But there are
you could always get a
obviously other
drone.
concerns that go along with having these areas, which are next to our beaches and everything else, camered. So
Right.
I cautiously
Okay.
would go there.
And I think it would cost more at this point if we were going to put surveillance cameras on the West Falmouth and the Green Pond areas, because we'd need more than one camera. We'd probably need at least 3 in each of those locations. And then we'd need one at Little Pond. I mean, it's not like one camera per site or even one site. It would be a pretty big project. And then getting the electric, and it'd be more than what we're going to pay poor Chuck just to watch.
The thought of it is also is that, I mean, these are single oysters that are, the two people that we have growing these oysters formerly worked at Katuitt Oyster Company. I mean, these are really an excellent product, and as we get through the summer, they're singles. They're almost identical to what you would find at, say, Katuitt Oyster Company. So there is a significant threat there that we're hoping to accomplish. And any of that, or wipe any of that free by doing random patrols 2, 3 in the morning, staggering our patrols, and also getting out there and looking at the animals and actually being in the water, looking for footprints, looking for other things like that. The cameras just can't, frankly, pick up. So.
Around and see.
Oh, Alex, thanks, Eric. See, I just noticed one figure here on the table that I hadn't seen before we talked earlier, and that is the disease environmental testing for this year. Went from $1,000 last year. Was that an estimate to $7,000 for this year? Is that?
Yes.
That's what's coming to.
We have to do a lot more testing than we initially thought. The planning number that came from Withhold Group was 1 test.
Right.
We have had to do way more than 1 test.
Okay, I couldn't tell if that 2013 has $1,000 listed. Not
Yes.
sure is that the actual or is that the plan?
That was what was planned.
Okay,
You'll notice that our budget was over by $2,000.
I see. Okay, so that was the.
And we
okay.
saved money on gear.
Yeah. Okay.
We need to have some budgetary margin for needing to do multiple tests.
Yeah. That's fine. I just wasn't sure
Yep.
how that jumped like that. But it's not that it jumped. It's that. Okay. Just wait for them.
No, it's fair to say the budget doubled from what it was originally projected to be.
Yeah.
So that's a jump.
It did jump.
But it is what it is. Steve?
Are you looking for a motion?
Yes.
I move that we approve the budget, and I specifically jumped at the chance to say that because I wanted to show that in good faith I'm in favor of it, and I think everybody's doing a great job. But I have a comment, and that's I'd really like to see a written strategic plan for this whole shellfish budget, because when I talk to different people, people are thinking totally different goals, even within the working group and so on. And if you have something in writing, then everybody can look at it and they either agree with it or they were saying, what's this? And you can't hide from it if it's in writing. and you can show it to other people.
Do we need a second? Yes. Second, thank you. Okay, and point well taken, and you're right. The first year's been an experiment, second year a little less so, but you have to have a plan beyond.
I just want to add one thing if I'm, go ahead.
First we had to learn to
Well,
grow shellfish.
I want to follow up on what Steve said. SIA kept accurate records as to how much labor was needed, and it turned out a lot more was needed, but obviously some of it we aren't going to have to do again because we don't have to put the bags together. But we have a year where we have actual expenses. We have the current year where we think we have the expenses pretty well allocated with this addition to the budget. We still have next year, which is not yet funded. So I really think this larger plan is very important because we're going to have to somehow leverage to get the third year. And we know that we need at least 3 years of data before we can really make a case to the DEP. So I think this should become a task that the aquaculture folks work on.
Just want to say, I think one thing has been understated here, and that's that there was a significant amount of labor that was required, and there was a significant amount of donation of time and labor by many community members. Steve Fassett's here tonight with us. Steve worked all the way through the summer building gear for the department. And there were another number of other folks that joined him. He was by far not the only one. And, you know, so what I will say is that it is actually a bargain because there was a significant amount of work that was done, and it really shows that the community wants to see this project succeed. So I don't want to lose sight of that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
In that context, do we have a slide
We do.
that you want to show folks before we take a vote on this? I was going to ask Chuck to bring this, but it weighs as much as he does, so we decided against it.
What are you saying?
Yeah, a picture is worth 1,000 pounds.
The kiosk.
All right, let me do it as a slide. There's the front. And there's the back. I'm not a great photographer, but why don't you describe it, Chuck?
So, as many of you are aware, this year we built our Fisheries Propagation Center, which is our, an enhanced effort to grow shellfish locally, primarily cohogs and oysters. And one of the 5 upwellers was funded through the committee. And we built a large deck area that has a number of pumps. We move about 2 million gallons of water a day. And we did a lot of the labor was performed through the Barnstable County Sheriff's Department, through the prisoners. The town engineering department did all the engineering work for us. And if anyone has not had an opportunity to see it, I encourage you to come on down and have a look at it. I'll just say real quickly, when staff is working on this upweller, the amount of citizens that come by to ask and look at what's going on is remarkable, to the point that I have to we try to work together when we schedule to clean it, because it can be difficult to get the task done of cleaning the tank because so many people are coming by interested in what's going on. It's obviously, we get the message out about what the committee's doing, what we're doing, and it's a great project. And that area does have cameras on it. So.
And so instead of having to answer every question, we can now point. to our what is an upweller, how does it work, and why we're doing it.
This is a large sign. It's actual size, I think.
That's about actual size. It's a kiosk.
Yes.
Yes, it's this big.
Yep.
Here.
So there we go. So that'll be up this spring?
That's one of the final additions this spring, yes.
So. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the 2014 shellfish budget. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We got it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item, discussion and vote on betterment memorandum. One was sent around on Tuesday along with the agenda, and SIA has a copy of that, which she's going to hand around to the members. That has a couple of red lines in it, items that have occurred in the last day or so as facts became known, which you'll see because they're in red.
I'm gonna put it up.
Yeah, it's going to be up on the screen.
It's only on one page. Page 4 has the changes.
Those extras? Those extras.
As you probably remember, 2 weeks ago, we began this conversation about betterments, and there was a handout that showed the sewer service area, the sewer equivalent unit policy that had been voted in 1984. And we did a first run-through of facts about the sewer service area and information about betterments, what they are, what's our history, and what programs are there to help local residents. So tonight you're looking at that information put down in hard copy because ultimately this becomes an educational process not only to the selectmen but to the public at large. And we felt that by going through this information again, we would also get input from the committee, and Wynn has a few comments which he's passed out, which we're seeing tonight. And also, this is a work in progress, and so we've continued to gather information that we think would be useful to the community. So we're going to go through these, they're phrased as questions, one by one, and we have 11 questions. And I'll depend on the chair to sort of guide the conversation. But our aim is to be inclusive and also to hear additional thoughts because we've had 2 weeks to work on it.
But it is worth mentioning that the selectmen want this for their Monday night meetings, so we're not going to have too many new thoughts between now and then, but tonight's the night. Okay.
So we started with the very basic question of what is a betterment, and that it's a Mass General law. You can have betterments for roads, waters, or sewer. And it consists of the town paying for the costs up front, and that is a key piece. And they can do that through bonding or borrowing, or if they're lucky, existing funds. And then at a later date, recover some portion of those costs by charging a betterment fee. Mass General Laws lays out a specific legal process for assessing that betterment, and it becomes a lien on the property. It can be paid over 20 years now, and if the special legislation that is working its way through the legislature now passes, we'll be able to pay back a betterment of any size over 30 years. If the property is sold for whatever reason at any time during the betterment period, then any remaining balance at that point is paid at the closing. So just pause briefly to see if there are any questions on question 1.
In that paying at the closing is a requirement of the lender making the money. It's not a town requirement.
That's
the bank
correct.
requires.
They want to be the first mortgage.
Yes.
That's right. Yes, you're absolutely correct. All right. Second question was why are the selectmen in town meeting? Oh, sorry, Ron. I beg your pardon. I didn't see your hand.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just trying. Okay, just to know. There's just a few points, and some of these are questions at this point because I'm not totally up on every detail. But in the last bullet in 1, it says a 30-year repayment period. Up to 30 years, right? Once paid all at once or over time up to 30 years.
Yes.
That 30 years is, the law is 20 years, right? And we are asking for 30.
Well, actually, it's interesting. The law is 30 years if it's a water betterment, but it's 20 years if it's a sewer betterment.
Right.
And that was one of the inconsistencies that we picked up on. There's no reason why sewer shouldn't be 30 years also.
Right. What I'm saying here is that it's stated as if, has that been approved by legislature?
When you get into the section called assumptions, one of the assumptions of this is that that special act will be in place.
Right.
So, as of this moment, it's been approved by the Senate and it's in the committee on third reading of the House. And certainly our expectation is by town meeting it'll be passed into law. But it's an assumption in this document that it will be in law.
It's an assumption. It's just the way it's stated here is that it appears that it's been already passed. That's the only question I have.
Let's see section 10.
Section 10 has the assumptions and
Maybe it would be good if she ran through the whole thing and then we got into the question and answers.
Okay.
well, okay.
We're going to be overlapping here.
Fair enough. Yes, fair enough, depending on the questions.
Okay.
All right.
Well, just before we move on, maybe it would be a good idea to put a footnote or something on that 30 years.
Well, why don't we get to the section 10 and see if it doesn't address that concern.
Okay. Second question was, why are town meeting and selectmen discussing betterments now? And this is basically a quick summary of where we are, that the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan has received a certificate from the Secretary. And so that plan to extend sewers to the lower Little Pond sewer service area is a valid plan. We have an article in the town meeting this April to fund the construction for the collection system for the Little Pond area. The design funds were already approved a year ago and approved also by the voters. We again make the point that this whole project for Little Pond does not raise taxes. It raise the tax levy. We are talking about issuing new debt to replace old debt. And we also feel that in the process of discussing this town meeting, discussing the construction dollars, it's a very logical question to ask. I live in a sewer service area. I want to have some idea of what I might be paying for a betterment. So it was necessary to gather information and create the scenarios, and that was our charge from the Board of Selectmen. Briefly, why are we sewering the lower Little Pond watershed? This is a repetition of the points that were made to town meeting a year ago when we did the presentation for the design funding. It is the most populated part of town, and it is practically at build-out. It is the most degraded estuary. We have an established TMDL, an established level of concentration that we are supposed to meet, and this requires 100% removal of the nitrogen that we can remove from this area. We know that the existing lots are very small. Many of them are under 5,000 feet, and that square feet, and that it's very difficult to have a septic repair there. And in addition, many of them don't even have septic systems and leach fields. They have the old cesspools, and so it's very difficult to even meet Title V. Lastly, we would say that this is not the first time that the town has recognized that this part of town has wastewater problems going all the way back to the early 80s. This was supposed to be the next area to be sewered. So that's just a quick reprise of the history. The map that was passed out to you at the beginning of, at the last meeting, I see it's not attached here. Okay. I think it's important for okay, I do. It's important to know the demographics, to know the profile of what this particular part of town is like. And so we have done a very careful study of all of the lots within that dashed red line, which it's not going to show up too well here, but see if you just took your cursor and went around for the public at home, and showed them where the boundaries were. With SIA's help, we have looked at the assessor's records for every parcel within the sewer surface area. It's a specifically defined area, and it has a total of 1,450 lots. Of those 1,450, single-family homes are 1,274. So this is an overwhelmingly residential area. We looked at the ownership pattern of those 1,274 homes and found that 1/3 of them were owned and owner-occupied. And the numbers there, 433. And 2/3 of them were either second homes or year-round rentals. This is a proportion that was somewhat surprising. We had originally thought it was more like 50-50, but the assessor's records indicate that only 1/3 of the residential parcels in this area are actually owned by residents of Falmouth. And then the census records show that about 40% of them are over 65. We list the benefits to the town and to the property owner. We believe the benefits to the town are definitely a cleaner estuary and no fish kills, improved shellfishing in due time, improved recreation, an increase in property values in the area, and as you know, we have passed a flow-neutral bylaw which sets out the parameters for water use for the sewer area as a whole, and provides for expansion of projects up to 4 bedrooms, but you cannot build anything more than 4 bedrooms within this area unless you happen to have more than 4 bedrooms now. And lastly, obviously, there would be jobs for local building trades. For the property owner, the benefits are going to be no more septic pump outs, no repair and maintenance of cesspools and leaching fields, and the ability to add a garage or a bedroom in an area that now has to be left for the septic system. And so ultimately you have a more valuable property. We looked at costs. We're now getting into that section of this presentation. We looked first to what costs would a homeowner avoid if the area were sewered, and we made the presumption that they would pump out every 3 years. I realize not everybody does that, but if you don't, it does reduce the life of your leaching field. And from information from the Board of Health, every 20 years replacing a leaching field is about a practice, a normal practice. And costing that out, obviously if you paid for the whole thing, it would be $10,000. If you use the Barnstable County's loan program, which goes over 20 years at 5% interest, then our annualized cost is $800. The costs incurred by the property owner if the area is sewered are three different costs. There is obviously a one-time hookup cost. We spoke with plumbers who had done the work in New Silver Beach, and $2,500 was the number that they used was their experience in New Silver Beach for a straightforward hookup. If it turns out you have unusual site conditions or you have to reverse your plumbing, then the cost can go up to about $4,000. We have annualized those costs to $200 to $325 per year. Some of the sewer service area will be gravity and some will be on low pressure grinder pumps. So we looked into what the electricity cost would be for those homes that have the low pressure, and it turns out to be about $25 a year. And then lastly, there is the annual sewer charge, which is going to continue out over time. So this is an important number. We have a documented water use for this area from the DPW records. These records have also been used by the Massachusetts Estuary Program in setting the TMDL for this area. And the average flow, residential flow, is about 100 gallons per household per day. Based on that flow and the current sewer charge, which is $6.10 for every 750 gallons, you end up with an annual charge of about $300 a year for the sewer. We've then presented a table that summarizes these costs. If you were staying on your septic system, you have annualized costs that come to $900. And if you're on a sewer, you have annualized costs that come to $500 to $650 a year for the 30 years or the 20 years, depending on how you're amortizing your costs. So that's a presentation of facts of costs that are separate from the betterment itself. And now we're going to look at the betterment. We know that we have an elderly population in this area, and so we wanted to know what programs there would be that would help homeowners with their sewer costs. And we have made a slight modification to what was sent out with your agenda, and so that's why partly what you're seeing is in red. This is help available to elderly homeowners. They're over 65, and we thought that we should make that clear. The circuit breaker tax credit, I've done more research on, and the second website, the massresources.org website, is extremely useful in walking you through how to access that credit. And you can do that whether you're in a sewer area or not. And so we put it in.
You should check that, because my mother did this, and renters can use that circuit breaker.
You are correct. Renters can also, that's true. Yep. The second bullet had to do with the Mass General Laws, deferral of betterment payments, which has been in place for many years and has been, the local assessors are very well aware of this program. We realized that we probably should use the technical language from the Act. So we had said $40,000 in assets. It's actually $40,000 in annual income as gross receipts. So that's why you see in red a slight change in the wording, and we're suggesting that the red bullet replace the black bullet where it says deferral of betterment payments. All right, then the history for betterments in Falmouth. The town has actually voted on betterments 3 different times and made 3 different decisions. In 1981, when the Falmouth Sewer, which was portions also of Surf Drive and small portions in Woods Hole, the split was 45% property owner, 55% town, and there was at that time also some federal grants, so it was of a smaller number. In 1997, town meeting voted 100% property owner for New Silver Beach, and no, the town would not contribute anything. But after a whole series of legal delays and escalation of the cost, the town meeting revisited that issue in 2006 and voted that the property owner would pay 70% and the town would pay 30%. And so that is in place at this time. Now, this is the assumptions, which sort of goes to what Ron started to bring up. In determining the betterments, in providing the scenarios, the options that the selectmen asked for, you have to make some assumptions. So we have done them based on the best information we have today. We're first in all our meetings with the state and agencies and all of the actions the town has taken with the flow neutral bylaw as an example. We expect to be on track to receive a 0% revolving fund loan, SRF is what it's called. which means that we will be able to borrow, but it will be at 0%. So there will be no interest payments. We're presuming that we will get that. We are presuming that the legislature will pass the special act the town meeting voted in 2013, which provided a number of ways to reduce the financial impact on homeowners. The selectmen can charge the same interest rate as the bond itself, which we just said is, we believe, will be 0. That the betterment payments can be made in equal amounts during the life of the loan. As it is now, you pay a large amount at the beginning and then it tapers off over time. That you can spread these payments over 30 years, and which, as I said earlier, you could do if it was a water project, but if it's a sewer project, the current law says only 20 years. And lastly, that you can pay it with your real estate bill quarterly instead of having to pay one payment through the whole year. We're expecting that the selectmen would exercise the options provided by the special act. And then we have, again, a black bullet and a red bullet. And this has to do with the sewer equivalent unit policy. The selectmen are now the sewer commissioners based on the change in the charter. In 1984, there was a separate Department of Public Works, and they were the sewer commissioners. And they passed this policy at that time. We have used that policy as a tool because it is an existing legal document, and it dealt with a large area that included residential and commercial, which is true of the Little Pond Sewer Service area. The selectmen, though, may want to review it, and we thought that this document should state that. So we basically have made a slight rewording as you see at the bottom of page 4, we're suggesting that the red bullet replace the black bullet. And we get to the last page, which puts these numbers together. And these are the betterment options for consideration. We make the point that this is an estimate based on the best information currently available, but this is not the betterment. The actual betterment is set through a public hearing in which every property owner within the sewer service area is notified by certified mail. That hearing will be held by the Board of Selectmen as the sewer commissioners, and there will be a clear process of how the amount will be assessed. There are 3 key components to calculating a betterment. You have to say what's the capital cost of the construction project, and that includes the design. How many sewer equivalent units within the sewer service area are going to be affected by that project, and then what percent, if any, of that capital cost would be paid back to the town over time. From the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, we know that the capital costs for the Little Pond Sewer Service Area collection is $41 million. That is the number that we are working with, and that has been scaled to 2016 when they expect to be in the ground. The sewer equivalent unit policy from 1984 provides that every household is 1 unit. As we said, this area is overwhelmingly residential. There are more than 1,200 houses that are residential. And then there is some commercial, and there are also some multifamily. So if you have a duplex, that will be 2 units. If you have a condo with 4 apartments, that's 4 units. If you have a restaurant or a motel, then this policy also addresses how many units, how many rooms equal a unit, or how many chairs equal a unit. From looking at all the existing properties, we came, and this is with help from SIA, we came to the conclusion that there are 1,600 sewer equivalent units in this sewer service area. And when you do the math, that comes out to about $25,600 per sewer equivalent unit if the property owner were going to pay the whole amount. The last piece of this discussion is the table at the bottom of page 5, which looks at 5 different scenarios. One is property owners don't pay anything, and it's all within the tax rate, and the town takes care of the whole project. At the other end is the 100% betterment, in which the property owners will carry the full amount. The town still bonds and borrows, but they have to pay it back, and they would pay back the full $25,600. And then you have this middle range, which I think is where the discussion ultimately will be, whether the homeowner would pay 25% of the cost, 50% of the cost, or 70% of the cost. And the reason we put 70 in is because that's what was paid in New Silver Beach. So you have those costs before you. We've calculated them as an annual payment over 30 years, which is what the special legislation does, or over 20 years if for some reason the special legislation didn't pass. And then in the final column, ultimately, the dollars that the town would recover. That's the presentation.
All right. Before we get into questions and answers, I want to express my astonishment at the level of work that went into this by Virginia, by Sia, and by the study group here.
Here.
This thing was dealt with word by word, line by line. They have done research that we know more about this town than anyone else in this town knows. Even the people that live in Mary Vista and the Heights don't know these things. I mean,
very localized, but
it is a really A-plus piece of work in terms of making an informed judgment. Because frankly, we're all learning in this thing, but this informs the town to the nth degree, and you couldn't ask for more, and we're greatly appreciative.
well,
Questions and comments? Win.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I would like to say exactly the same thing that you did, that this is an extraordinary document of information. And that's probably specifically why I want to ask these questions, because I think perhaps
good.
it can be answered.
Sure.
I've been trying to get clarity. The third bullet under item 2. I've been trying to get clarity for several weeks, and I must say I've not yet gotten clarity on the question of how taxes and betterments are related to one another.
Okay.
And so I'm asking the question once again in this question. If a betterment is charged property owners in the proposed Little Pond sewer service area, will property taxes, let's assume that this is the only thing that's going forward, would property taxes be reduced to all taxpayers in Falmouth by the total betterment amount, first of all?
All right. There is a time factor to this answer.
Yes.
Town meeting can always make things change. But I think the answer would be no. And here's the reason why. The town borrows the money up front. All right, and so we've worked out how we're, within our existing budget, paying for whatever those bond costs. In the meantime, at some trickle rate, people are paying back on the betterment. Some people may pay the whole thing the first year. Some people may be making their annual payments, and then in year 10, the house gets sold, and then the whole amount comes back. Some people, God bless them, live in their house for 30 years, okay, and making an annual payment. And so at the end of those 30 years, the money would all have come back. In the meantime, the town has been making its choices in town meeting and perhaps on the ballot as to what other capital projects they want to construct. The treasurer looks at these payments of betterment as income, but she only knows it after the fact, right? She can't be sure that everybody's going to pay it off in the first year or the 5th year, or they're going to wait for the 30th year. She can make assumptions, but basically it comes in as a local receipt.
All right, now this is the question. If can she make the assumption that the betterments are going to actually be paid every year? In other words, can she make that assumption?
She can make the assumption there will be some amount that will be paid.
I'm talking about the regular payments coming in, which will be put on the tax bill if we have it, that they will be paid on the tax bill every quarter.
At the end of the year, the town will have more money with a bigger betterment
That's right, yeah.
than if it didn't have.
Yes,
a
that's
betterment.
quite true.
Right.
So they'll be in a
Yeah.
in a better position in some sense. What they do with the money,
It's just, if...
That's
perfectly
the answer.
true, yes.
Okay.
But look at it this way. Suppose that, can she make the assumption that the betterments are going to be collected at the rate of whatever, over the 30-year period? Can she make that assumption?
When? She can make the assumption. The question is, will she make that assumption? And
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
she's going to be conservative. She's going to wait till the money comes in, and then she'll say to the town, this is what we have available for this next year's budget.
So what she's going to do is to say, we're going to collect the taxes and assume that nothing is going to come in. And we're going to collect the taxes. And then if things come in, we will, but then that means that in the future years, they could, this budget, this program would allow them to cut taxes if there were not other things going on.
Right.
And I think it seems to me that it's reasonable to think of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
you've answered,
Okay.
I think I've got a clear idea of what you're talking about.
Okay, good.
Just one point, I think that in Jennifer Petit's presentation, she showed that if there was a 0%, that there's no betterment, that for a few years at the beginning, taxes would be higher, because there were a couple of peaks above the level that was estimated.
But that has to do with, we don't have...
And she
as
had
much.
some other capital projects in there.
That-
Like a senior center.
Zero, but I'm just, there was a little bit for a
Yeah.
couple of years
Yeah.
that things that went up. There was a little bit.
I understood that the reason for that was that we were borrowing more money than we had taxes to pay for a couple of years, and then after that it would be...
No, we would never do
You
that.
can't
No.
do that.
We can't do that.
You can't do that.
We can't do
So
that.
that's why I thought she was raising the taxes then.
Well, but she's not. I mean, you can, but she's not going to do
There
that,
is no raising of taxes involved in this.
this project.
That's because there is this, quote, window of opportunity,
I understand that.
which means there is a revenue stream. Well, to put it simple, if you're borrowing $40 million at 0% interest over 20 years, you've got to come up with $2 million a year to pay it off.
Yeah.
The town has that $2 million now to pay it off available. So if they get money in from betterments, they can reduce their debt or they could, whatever town meeting just decides to do. But the money to pay off the $40 million is available now without raising taxes.
Okay?
From the existing tax base.
From
I
the
thought
existing-
those first 2 years,
Right.
whether she'd have to find the money somewhere. They wouldn't make taxes.
Don't worry about the first 2 years.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. We didn't need to worry about those
Right.
first 2 years. Is what I was
Okay.
saying.
All right, next question.
Okay. Now, on item 6,
6.
I think two things. I think that you pointed out yourself that these assumptions were based on, the assumptions you had were based on a pump out of every 2 to 3 years, but you didn't think that people did pump out every 2 to 3 years, mostly. That if they did pump out every 2 to 3 years, they would be better off. They wouldn't have to replace their septic systems quite as often. And you said that as it is now, with the way they do things, with sometimes they do it properly, sometimes they don't, they tend to replace septic systems every 20 years or so. It seems to me that's double count. That you're double counting because they don't pump out every 2 to 3 years. Therefore, they have the $10,000 they have to pay every 20 years. So it's a little bit overstating the amount.
Maybe
of money.
John could.
I was just going to say, I don't think I agree with you,
Can you
and I'm just
address that?
curious what John would say.
He's on the Board of Health.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think all of these numbers are approximations.
Yes, they are.
We're just best
Yeah.
guessing. We know what a new septic system costs. If you have to replace it and it fails, you're looking at about $10,000.
The leach field.
The leach field.
Yeah, the leach
You
field,
can normally maintain the tank unless you have a cesspool, then you need it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And it costs about $300 to have your septic system pumped.
Right.
And a typical family of 4 people ought to do that every 3 or 4 years.
Ought.
That's not to say that everybody does that, I mean, I think there are a lot of people who think, you know, when you flush the toilet, it goes into the ground and you forget about it.
Yeah.
And they've been forgetting about it for years. But you can only do that so long.
They're likely to have to replace their septic system sooner than someone who pumps every 3 years, probably.
But there's another factor that makes this sort of academic, and that's that there's also a profit, if you will, that if there is a sewer system that hasn't been entered in the table because it's even more vague, but it's much bigger. It's mentioned qualitatively, and that's the ability to do things with your property.
Well, let's take one thing at a time.
I leave it to you, the economist, to figure out how you monetize that, but it makes the other academic.
Let's take it one thing at a time. That's mentioned later. I mean, you mentioned that as one of the advantages to the households already. So let's just talk about these figures here.
I think Sia's got something on this.
Well, the reality from speaking to people in that area, both from shellfishing and from people who have called about various different things, there are a number of homes that are actually pumping out their septic systems every year in that area, because when we looked for the purposes, we did this study over a year ago with GHD to see how many tanks we might be able to use for the step-steg systems. And if you go back into those records, you'll see a lot of cesspools. And those cesspools it's more than 50% cesspools. And those cesspools are being pumped more than 2 or 3 times, you know, once every 2 or 3 years. They're being pumped every year because they're filling up.
They're essentially in failure.
Essentially, they're being managed carefully. So that what people are doing, some people aren't doing anything, but a significant fraction of other people are doing more. So that's why I think it's a fair estimate.
Okay. So you've done your research. You figured that that's a fair estimate. Okay.
And that also speaks, Win, to your item 2B.
It does speak to item 2B, but I'd like to nevertheless speak to item 2B in this way.
Before we move on from that, because I had a point on that as well. Pumping is one thing, okay, if they do it several times. But how many of those actually will put in a leaching field? I mean, if it's a cesspool, they're just pumping. So they're not replacing a leaching field, which is the big chunk. Was it $800 estimate of the $900 of avoided costs? So if not many people in that area, I mean, John would know better, but you know, unless they're going to sell their house, we'll have to do something. But I think most do nothing, and that's what Cheryl Williams said. A lot. She didn't say most. She said that some don't bother.
But the reality of the lower Little Pond area is that it's a time bomb waiting to go off because you can't do nothing forever.
Right.
And this is a development from the 1970s.
Right.
It's 1970s homes, and so things are ending their useful, practical life. And the reason you don't pump every year, all of a sudden what you have to do is replace your system.
Right, but 1970s, if my math is right, is like 40 years ago. So, like after 20 years, they should have failed. So they've been doing this for the next 20 years with theoretically broken systems.
I think what we've heard is that if you pump every year in your cesspool, you are failed. No one has come in and shut you down, but
oh no, I know.
You can't sell the house in that condition. Put it that way.
Right. And you can't sell your house.
Yeah,
Right.
No,
We have someone from the Heights here and the Mara Vista area who might have some.
I have a Title V system with a leaching field and everything, and I have it pumped out every 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
So,
Do it.
Good for you. Right.
Right.
I've been there for at least 14, 15 years.
A question for John. Doesn't the Board of Health monitor how many times they're pumped out?
We never have been able to get accurate pumping records. It's something we've tried for years to get at this treatment plant. When the haulers bring it in, they have to sign a slip where they've been. We've been trying to computerize that. We've never gotten that under control. So we really don't have a good idea of that. I think the take-home thing is, though, that of all these places that have cesspools, the average property transfers what, every 7 years a property sold on average? At the time of sale, those systems have to be inspected. And if they're failed, then before the sale can take place, they're going to have to upgrade those systems. So,
And a cesspool is an automatic failure nowadays, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
I mean, I tried to get mine failed. You wouldn't do it.
Unless you want it to, in which case it won't.
I am sure there can be many angles and takes on avoided costs. It seemed to us that it was important to at least document that there are, to some degree, it's going to vary from property to property, but there are some avoided costs. There are costs that once you're on the sewer, you will never have to consider.
That's, I think, true.
Okay.
That 800 figure, you came in before with 500, and I think your 500 figure was closer to being an accurate figure of the true cost to the homeowner because of two reasons.
Without interest.
No,
When you're the one that pointed out to
That's
me
right.
that the $500 figure was without the interest. And I thought, oh my God, I forgot the interest.
But you forgot here two other things, one of which you didn't mention at all, and one of which you've forgotten.
What's
is
that?
the time value of money.
Well, I'm not an economist.
Okay, well, the time value of money suggests that, the simplest possible example would be that 5% of the people have to replace their septic systems every year. The time value of money suggests that if that's true, then the true value of having to replace their septic systems next year as opposed to having to replace their septic systems 20 years from now is quite different. In other words, that would...
No, it still comes out to 800.
Because the actual
It's the sinking
cost
fund, because the
goes
cost,
up.
exactly, they both go up.
Exactly.
You don't have to pay the cost now, you have to pay it later, and at that
You
future
have to pay
time.
more later.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
10,000 is present worth.
And
Yeah,
what you're
it's
putting in
present
the
worth.
sinking, yeah.
That's right.
Right.
10,000 is a
It doesn't
present-
matter whether it's
Right.
a sinking fund or mortgage, the number comes out the same.
If you're going to do that, you have to think about the value of the 29th year of paying the town the betterment. You know, by then, your dollars are going to be worth pennies. So it's really going to be a bargain.
But your electric rate will have doubled.
Yeah, they're all on the same escalator. So
They
this
said that
this
20
was-
years ago.
There's also the question you didn't take into account, the fact that you can get a tax credit when you...
I will need to check that. You're saying that there's a specific
There's a specific tax credit, I believe, which
Massachusetts that would show on your Form 1.
applies. I believe so.
Jerry?
I looked that up
The
a long time, a
The
couple of years
septic
ago.
tank credit, okay,
Yeah,
is eligible.
yeah,
I think you have to look carefully at if you're a homeowner
yeah.
or if you're a renter. If it's
Yeah.
not your principal residence, this is something you have to check with
Yeah.
your tax accountant.
It's going to be
It's
a...
$6,000 over X period of years. The county, no, that's the hookup.
The state,
The
yeah.
tax credit is there if you qualify.
Right.
Please see your tax accountant.
I think that's...
Okay,
that's quite...
but in terms as an aid to homeowners, obviously if we're talking about a sewer service area, then putting in a new septic tank is not what we're advocating. But I think it's an important program for us to know about for the town as a whole.
I think if you put it in a sewer, it's also available for the hookup.
Well, you
I
say
believe
that.
it is
So
available.
it's a
The loan is
wash
available.
in terms of cost and benefit. I mean,
Yes.
if you're
The loan
comparing...
is available for the hookup. I believe that the
Yeah.
tax credit may be available.
Well, okay.
I talked with George about this. It was a long time ago. I'd have to look
Okay.
it up.
Why don't you look it up, and if you
Yeah.
find something that we can add to this later on, that would be fine.
Please
Yes.
talk to a tax accountant
But right,
Yeah.
or
Well,
a tax lawyer.
and they won't be talking to you until
Tax
after
advice.
April 15th, so.
no, that's true. That's true. I'll have to think a little bit more about the point you're making about the time value of money. I'll have to think that through a little bit better. But, yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
we get your list there
Okay.
pretty well.
One more question, one more thing about that item, number B. When I say something about that tax credit, one of the aspects of the tax credit is it only can be claimed in any case by people who pay taxes to the state of Massachusetts equal to the amount, and it is not available to many low-income people who do not pay taxes for the state of Massachusetts, so very little.
I'd be interested in the Mass General laws or whatever
Yeah,
specifics you can
I'll
give me.
look that up and see what I can figure
Yep.
out exactly.
Yep.
So it's, and something you pointed out here, these items, in number 8, these items do not provide assistance to homeowners under 65 years of age. And I think that in the final result, when we put this whole thing through, we need to talk about some way of providing help for people who are going to be there's about 1 or 2% of the population are going to be caught by this, I think. And we ought to have some way of providing help to them. I don't know how it's going to be done, but it wouldn't take more than 1 or 2, set aside of 1 or 2% of the amount of money that's coming in to do that. And so I think some way ought to be put forward to do that.
Right.
I don't think that the selectmen need to worry about it right now, but that's something that needs to be put forward.
Okay.
Good point.
And I also, and the last thing goes to that first question I had with third bullet under.
Yeah, I think we've answered that, and
But
you don't need to wade into it again.
The only question it seems to me that people ought to recognize that they are paying taxes. If they're not paying that much, they are paying some taxes, and everybody's paying taxes. That has to be somehow or another mentioned or set up that taxes plus betterments are what is the total cost. Yes. However, one way, and you can look at, I tried to set it up, you can look at it either it's half
Right.
full or half empty.
Fraction.
Well,
If your taxes are lower, then you.
the selectmen asked us to offer them betterment options, and tax policy is clearly beyond our scope
Yeah.
and competence.
It has to do with the fairness question.
Understood, fairness.
Everybody in town pays taxes,
Yes,
period.
yeah.
So the betterment people will pay betterment and the tax on the assessed value of their house.
And they will, their betterment plus whatever that, yeah.
Matt will remember one of the lines we heard up at the State House about what is a fair tax policy, which is, don't tax you, don't tax me, tax the guy behind the tree.
Of course. Of course, that's right. And that's what we're going to run into.
I'm trying to remember who said that.
He's in jail now.
Ed Tay?
I just would like to make one general comment. I don't know how you can include it in here. I don't know how you can include it in what you're saying, but I'd like to make one general comment that there is for a number of reasons, a reason for keeping betterments down lower if you want to be fairest to the town in general. I think that's something I think the selectmen themselves are.
I would give you an argument on that,
Okay.
because when you think about this, we have 1,600 sewer equivalent units, all right? And about 400 of them are owned by single-family homeowners who live in their homes, okay? The other 1,200 are summer houses, landlords, and commercial establishments, McDonald's, the Admiralty, Burger King. I don't see any great public benefit in giving tax breaks or providing a sewer for free to those folks and having all the rest of us pay for it. I think they're all quite capable of paying their share, and their share should be
They do pay their property
substantial.
taxes.
Understood.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is they're getting a specific, very valuable benefit running down their street when this is all over. And the rest of the taxpayers are not.
I think you're right on that. I think that if you look at it, over the years that we're going to be doing this, everybody is going to, people all over the town are going to be having improvements made on their properties in one way or another. And they're going to have to pay for them one way or the other. Some of them are going to pay larger amounts and some of them pay smaller amounts. I think that the town itself will look at it as being fairer in the long run if everybody pays through taxes than if you have betterments on people in any particular. I feel it's a fairer way to do it.
Okay, fair enough.
And I think there's arguments on both sides. I think that tax fairness is something that people argue about all the time. But I want to put forward just the idea that I think it's fair.
John, and then get over here.
I think one of the things we've lost sight of is that the $41 million that we're talking about here as the total capital cost of this project is only the collection system. The town in general is paying for improvements at our treatment plant, for the new discharge sites. So the town is kicking in a lot. And so I think we need to keep in mind that as we think about this whole project.
I think that's also true, what you're
Okay,
saying.
Matt, then.
Yeah, I just got a small point on your number 8.
Okay.
The bottom red bullet.
Yeah.
I don't know if somebody at town meeting will bring it up, but there is a pretty steep interest rate on that. I don't know if you want to put that in.
Yes, the interest rate is 8%. Okay.
It is true, there is an interest rate, but you only pay it if you sell your house or die. So it's not really a big impact on most people. Either they have just sold the house and they have some money, or they're dead and they don't care.
Or the people inherited have to pay it.
Well, I'm sorry, if they inherited a house and have to pay 8% interest, I am not going to cry too much about that.
Well, it's just maybe we should have it in there, just fair.
It's a summary. I mean,
Yeah, but
More than a summary.
well,
It's not a big deal.
I think we're trying to provide as much useful
Yeah.
information that is available, and we've got the 5% in for the other things, so putting in that the interest rate is 8%.
Sure.
Sure, I don't have a problem with that.
All right. Ron?
Right.
Thanks.
I have a number of points. We'll take a couple minutes. But first, I do want to reiterate what you said, Eric, that there's a tremendous amount of work went into this. And this is, for what it is, it's a useful document. I'm not sure it's a complete document the way it is, but, and I have a concern that's quite serious. But basically, let me go through the small things. If we, I would suggest, I think that assumption section is a good section, is point 10, but I would suggest that we kind of move that to the front so that people kind of get an idea of where this sort of came from and what was put into it, as opposed to the end. It's sort of like an introductory paragraph saying, based on what we know today, this is what we've come up with.
Well, the reason it's 10 is because it comes before 11. 11 11 is what the selectmen asked us to do, okay? Give us scenarios. And clearly, when you're doing the actual math, you need to be very clear. And so I wanted it to be right up front, just before we got into the math, that in doing these scenarios, we had to make some assumptions, and here they are. They will be 0%. The special act will pass and the selectmen will use it. And that we have an existing policy of 1984. So I would resist moving it because it's going to get lost in the other things, and it really is pertinent to number 11.
And you at least have to have it after 1, 2, 3, and 4, because those have to be there to tell people what the heck is going on. Otherwise, you jump into this arcane stuff. And it probably should be after 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and that sort of makes it 10.
Puts it in 10, yeah.
So the thing is, we do have the 30-year figure in point 1.
Okay.
That's kind of like what brought up the flag. It says 30, time up to 30 years. And it could just be that that could have a footnote at the bottom that says C point 10.
Well, if the 30 years you think really triggers, gets people off, we can just leave it at it can be paid once or over time, and not even say whether it's 20 years or 30 years.
Over time of the betterment.
Over time is the betterment.
That would be fine.
Oh, okay. All right, let's do
I just
that.
don't want to give people an impression that we have it in the bag. We will have it in the bag.
we will.
Pretty certain, but we
Okay.
don't have it in the bag yet. Okay.
At once or over the time of the betterment.
Okay, great.
Okay, we got that.
And then on point 3, the second bullet, it says, report concluded that 100% of the nitrogen from the lower Little Pond watershed must be removed. It isn't 100% of the nitrogen.
Of the removable nitrogen, or there is
Well, it was sort of
The
like,
septic
they had
tanks he
septic nitrogen, but it was like 70% of the total. It was something like that, because you can't get rid of all of it. We got rain, we got everything coming down, right?
Right.
So,
It's the human source.
so it's sort of
nitrogen.
like
Okay.
Of the wastewater septic tanks, so the homeowners.
It was the word was controllable.
controllable.
Oh,
controllable.
well,
so,
yeah, that we had control over, right.
Well, controllable. I would just say.
That was the word that was used, I believe, in the CWMP.
I think.
100% of the controllable
And
nitrogen.
MEP uses the same terminology.
That's right.
No, it does. Well, it does.
For controllable,
The
it
tables
does.
show they use controllable in it.
Yeah,
I think
Yes.
they say.
I believe.
Because fertilizer is controllable. And
You
that's
don't,
in the
you
fertilizer
can't get a
bylaw.
credit, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's stay off of fertilizer for a minute here.
Right.
But you're looking for a word that more accurately describes this last sentence.
But I believe the word is controllable.
100% of the controllable
100% of the controllable nitrogen
That would be
must be removed.
That'd be fine.
That's
Okay.
Controllable, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. It just struck me that
Yep.
I've
Yep.
raised this so many
that's
times.
No, you're
so it
right.
keeps
Yeah,
coming back.
100% is impossible.
Okay.
Right.
Right, so anyway, fine. Yeah, right, it is. You have to, what about the puppies, the things running around? I mean, you know, controllable, right?
Puppies?
Okay.
Ducks.
Ducks, whatever it is. Okay, and then on point 4, the last bullet, I think it's 40% based on 2010 census. It's 40% of the principal residences, not of all the residents.
Oh, it says resident homeowner.
It's a resident homeowner.
Oh, you see,
Resident homeowner.
principal resident homeowner as opposed to,
Oh, you're saying the census,
Well, no, it's just that it's 40% of 433. That's all I'm
Yes.
saying.
yes.
Which is the principal resident figure.
It's
Right,
the
right.
owner-occupied
right,
principal residence.
owner occupied.
Right.
Yeah, whatever.
Because if it's a second home, we don't care how old they are.
I know, but there's a difference, resident homeowner versus principal, owner occupied principal residence. It's different.
Primary residence versus seasonal.
Are you suggesting we wordsmith this and
Yeah,
go
just
back?
wordsmith it, so
Okay.
it's 40, so you know it's 40% of the principal residences.
Primary resident homeowner?
We're gonna call it owner-occupied principal resident.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's
Owner-
173.
Owner occupied
The only other
principal.
question I have on this is that, do you have any idea what percent are below the poverty level? Because as Matt has pointed out, this is one of the lower income areas. And I'm concerned about that demographic.
They looked at this, and the difficulty is these census tracts are huge. I mean, there's no census tract that just covers this small area. The census tract, this area is split into 2 census tracts. One of them goes all the way up to Goodwill Park, and one of them goes all the way over to Green Pond.
Right.
So it's really hard to get a handle on this particular segment of that population with any accuracy.
Someone quoted a figure of $40,000 a year for something as
That was for the
It's
senior-
lower, it's
senior-
That's in the,
$32,000 a year.
that's the income
It's
you have to be below
$32,000
to
Yeah.
qualify for the deferral.
So we're
It's,
talking about the 2 blocks?
We're okay on the blocks now.
Yeah, 32 for
No.
median household incomes.
Yeah, it's 32,000 a year.
So, okay, I just, I
Okay.
don't know what to do about
Any
that.
other?
The concern, yeah. So, but that is, that's the main gist of what I'll be coming to, is that issue of low income. That's one thing. But, okay, but let's move on to 5 then. And we have, we missed, I think it's important, that benefits to the town, odor reduction from these
Odor.
estuaries
Fine.
can also be included. And I think increased property values is not correct. According to Tricia Fabuli, Jerry asked her directly, she said there's no impact on property value based on sewer.
The theory,
Sewering versus
the theory on that was, currently people have a house that if it has 3 bedrooms and no garage, it can't have a garage or another bedroom. If it has a sewer going by, it can now have more bedrooms and they can add a garage, and that makes it a more valuable property when it comes time to sell, because somebody could buy it and say, well, maybe I'll add a bedroom and a garage.
Maybe it's potential for property value improvements would be better.
Potential for?
Property value
Sure.
improvements. I think that would be, or whatever. I think that, because it gives the impression
Yep.
that put a sewer in and everybody's,
Okay.
okay. And then,
Hang on, do we have,
okay.
we got that one, potential for property value improvements?
okay. We've already had a discussion, extended discussion on avoided costs, so I won't go into that, but Cheryl Williams, you know, the whole thing about people not doing something, but there's mixed views on this. I don't know how to resolve it, but it's the way it is. Then moving to point 8. Actually, stay with point 7. Something else occurred to me. What I point 7. I think this is great. You guys did a great job on pulling all this together, but I think there's something missing here, a piece. And that has to do with this map. This map is great. It shows all the area, which is great. What it doesn't show is, for one thing, where the pumping stations are, which I think is important, so homeowners will know that because of the odor problems we have in town with pumping stations. But more importantly, where the grinder pumps are gonna be, and I think it's on the west side, right? And those grinder pumps have an additional cost. They have a cost of wiring the thing to the home, which if they got a nice breaker panel there, it's gonna be relatively inexpensive. I have no idea what that cost is. If they have to change the breaker panel because it's below what the load would can allow, I went through this with something with personally here, and I had to go through, well, anyway, I worked it out. I did the math, and they accepted it. But that's something that could be quite costly, especially for these older homes. So this wiring of the grinder pumps is not it's not in the cost estimate.
It's in the hook.
It's
It
in-
is.
it's in the
It is.
range.
I believe it's in the hookup cost.
In the range.
It's absolutely in the hook.
Yeah.
Grinder pumps is a low voltage, you know, if you have a 60 amp, maybe you have trouble. Everybody I talk to on grinder pumps, you know, you got at least 110, most people have 200 amps. You're right, I mean, you know, the internal wiring may be a little bit.
But will the county finance it?
The whole hookup, yeah.
No, will they hook up the wiring part of it, or will they just
Part
hook
of the
up the
hookup.
pipe?
Yeah, it's part of the hookup.
Absolutely part of the hookup.
We did check with the vineyard where they put in grinder
Yeah,
pumps and
okay.
gravity, and the installation cost, according to them, was not substantially different. There is an extra piece for the electricity, but other parts of the cost are less because the pipes are smaller and they're easier to deal with. And so it came out pretty much as a wash on the vineyard.
I think,
Okay.
You could have your plumber subcontract to the electrician, and the county would never know.
hook up, okay. So that is,
But our-
So
national
you're
television
saying,
audience
you're
will-
saying that a breakout of the grinder
No,
pump
no.
electric costs?
I don't think it needs to be from what you just said.
Oh, good.
But I think
Okay.
that under one-time hookup costs, you know, he talks about unusual site location, reversing plumbing, et cetera, well, et cetera is there.
That's
but-
the et cetera.
Good thing we put that in.
but, yeah.
You want to say electrical panel?
But it could say electrical, just so that people, you know, electrical needs or something, so people know it.
Okay, you want to add that, electrical panel?
Okay, electrical
Okay,
panel.
it just
Yeah.
occurred to me, because I have no idea what that cost would be.
Right.
Okay, that's just one of the
Okay.
one of the
Not a lot.
Okay,
elements
it's
to
in
it.
there.
And if it's inexpensive, all the better, of course.
Okay.
The next item, sorry to go through, but as Cecilia knows, when I go through reports, I tend to, it's in all the details. Okay, so the next is, okay, the 8% interest we got. Tell me one thing, and this is something on point 9. And when we talk about 1981 Falmouth Village sewer, but did that include Woods Hole? Did you say that? Because I thought it was a 90% federal grant, and there were no betterments.
Oh,
No,
there
they
were
bet-
definitely betterments.
But they were small compared to these days. It was,
No. In 1981, we did have a federal grant for 90%. You remember the biggest cost of that project was building the plant. And so the grant basically built the plant. But everybody who had a hookup, all along Main Street, all down in the Surf Drive area, Gardner Road and Woods Hole, all of them.
Neil Pond.
Yep, they had betterments, and that was the town vote.
well, a good deal of Woods Hole was done in 1948.
Right.
Yes,
But-
and
but
that's too far back.
Some of the extra pieces,
But, so there was a 45%
Yep,
Yep.
betterment.
yep.
that was.
Yeah, we have the
Of
actual.
10% of the capital costs.
I owned a house on Millfield Street where there's the sewer thing, but I guess
But
I just
it's
got it later.
Somebody else
after
paid
it was
for
paid
it.
off.
It's
Somebody else paid.
academic, because the whole point of point 9 is that there's no discernible precedent, so the selectmen can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, Tom, that's good, okay. So, all right, so the assumptions are in 10, that's good. But except for one assumption. And that is, I think in point 3, what is the point 3? Yeah, in point 3, there's very little. And the thing is that according to the special act, the interest on the betterment will be decided by the selectmen between 0 and 2%. We don't know what it's going to be. We don't know what they're going to decide. Okay?
Right.
And a lot of the calculations later on are based on 0%.
All of them,
And,
right.
and we don't,
If we get a 0% loan, the assumption assumption is that the Board of Selectmen will exercise the option of charging them 0, because they can.
No, they could charge them 2%
But
above 0.
But they can charge them 0 if they chose.
Right, but they can also charge 2%.
Understood, they could charge them 5 under
No,
the
they
current
can't.
state law.
No, they can't, according to the.
It's current state law, they certainly can.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, but
You
our.
researched this yourself, you know this.
No, but our special, I know, but our special legislation
Yes.
puts it between 0 to 2%.
Right, so that gives them the option of the current state law or the special legislation.
Correct.
If they choose special legislation to follow, they can charge 0. Our assumption is they're going to charge 0.
Okay.
And we
well,
should
okay.
put 0 in there. Maybe
you
that's all we
Well,
need to
no,
do is
well,
the
if it
Board of
is 0.
Selectmen will exercise the 0% option allowed by the special
Is that
legislation.
what you get?
assumptions,
We
yeah.
can say that.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what we
if
need to
we can
do.
say that they would do that.
We're saying we're assuming, well,
We'll assume they do that.
Let's assume they do that.
That's an assumption.
that's the
Okay, but they
assumption.
could do 5%. You're
Sure.
saying.
We're not assuming
Okay.
that.
Under current
That's
state law,
fine. They're not coming to my main
absolutely.
point. Just keep that one, don't
We
let
should
that one go.
subtly suggest
Yeah,
it to
just
the
do that way.
occupant.
Okay,
Right.
Be aware.
all right,
Right.
great, okay,
right.
okay.
Just so I'm clear, are we going to put 0% into that third bullet?
I would say that it should be.
It is it's the fair, it's the assumption
Okay,
that's made.
okay.
We'll
Exercise-
exercise options such as the 0% one.
Right.
There we
Because
go.
Apparently,
Yep.
there's more than one option. that they
Yeah,
can
right.
choose from.
Yeah,
Okay,
and they're
got
all
it.
spelled out in the previous bullet.
Right.
Okay, all right, then on 11, we have, actually, 11 makes all this quite interesting, because it's unclear why this document's even necessary based on this, because there's gonna be so much discussion in the future, except as an educational thing, and I thought this related to Article 27, I think, on the warrant, or I don't know why Article 27 is on the warrant at this point, but we'll come to that. I think that there was 11, again, I think it's 11.3. Okay, so the point there is that if we're gonna have all these things going on in the future,
Point 3 addresses what he was just talking about.
yeah,
Yeah, it says it.
point
Okay,
3.
so we don't need it in the other place.
Wait, what point 3?
Okay.
Percent-
Section 11,
Yeah,
capital cost number 1. 2,
Yeah.
sewer equivalent unit. 3, percent component. That addresses the point you were just raising earlier.
no, I was
No,
talking
no.
about interest, not percent per
gotcha.
betterment.
Okay, so we'll have it in both places.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
go ahead. So what do you want to do with number 11?
Okay, no, it's a point that I'm not completely clear, because I think that we may be rushing things at this point with Article 27. And I'll explain the basic reasons. No, I think I've basically we've gone through 11. Okay, percent component, okay, fine.
Okay.
So, when I look at this, and I look at this work, I mean, it's great. We have this table here.
Okay.
And this table is,
Let's go.
this table shows a certain payback program for various percentage of betterments.
Yeah.
We have some big unknowns. First one, we don't know what the system's gonna cost. We just don't know. We know $41 million has been estimated. A lot of people say, what about the high school? Well, I say, what about the public library? I mean, you can look at these things in
Okay,
town.
let's stick to the
But the
point here.
point is that we don't know what it's gonna cost. We don't know what's gonna be settled with regard to the interest rate that the selectmen, which could be up to 5%.
Right.
We don't know, those are some of the main factors.
Mhm.
And what we're doing in setting something up at this point, and maybe we should even advise the selectmen in this way, is that we are trying to come up with an approach where we don't know the facts exactly of what's going to be what. Wouldn't it be better to say that we move forward with the whole betterment question when we know what the betterment is? And right now, we don't know. We don't know what it's
Right.
going to cost, so we'll get a bid at some point, is there any urgency to doing this now? Or do we get the bid, we find out what the interest rate will be, we know, and if the term goes for 30 years, we know 30-year payback, and we'll know equal payments, but it'll be very clear, because what happens here is that something gets voted, everything keeps moving down the road, and then all of a sudden, people who haven't signed a thing, like the subprime mortgage debacle, in that case, people signed. And maybe they didn't know what they were signing, but in this case, they're not even signing anything. They won't even know.
Yes.
This will be something that will be applied. It's something that will be, it isn't that there won't be a betterment, or we don't need this type of thing. But the point is,
we get the gist.
that
You'd rather
we need to
defer
know-
this decision because there are unknowns.
because there are unknowns, and that would make it very clear to those people, of which none of us on the panel live in that area, but those people in that area will have a clear idea. Town meeting will have a clear
Right, we got
idea
it. Got it.
of what
Okay,
the voters
any
will
response
have.
to that?
Yeah.
Steve?
The problem with that is that these people are some of the people that will be voting at the town meeting and in the election on the overall appropriation. So it's reasonable to give them the best idea that we can. Nobody can predict the future exactly.
No, I'm saying do it later. I'm saying do it now. Yeah.
The 41 million vote is coming up at the town meeting. If I lived there and no one gave me any idea what the betterment was, I'd be very upset. And I suppose the selectmen have the option down the road, I don't know, if the costs change, they could adjust the betterment percentage, couldn't they?
That's actually what happened in North Falmouth.
And if I was selectman, I would do that.
The original betterment was 100% on the neighbors, and that was agreeable to them. The cost doubled over the 10 years because of this lawsuit.
And so they cut the betterment percentage
And
to
so-
keep the absolute value about the same.
That's right.
So it can change if circumstances change. But again, it's to give the people an idea, because they're going to vote on this in April, as Steve said. They need the best guess they can get from the selectmen as to what the betterment is likely to be. That's all you can offer them at this point. You're absolutely right.
What we are asking the selectmen to do is, what we're providing information to the selectmen to do is to set a betterment percentage, not to set an amount of
Well,
betterment.
that's true.
And I think
That's the second key
that's the
piece,
point,
which
yeah.
my guess is Jerry was about to.
Yeah, the only other time we can change the betterment policy, if you want town meeting input, will be November, because we have to start going to the state. We can't wait till after we open bids and do all this stuff, because our financing will be out the window.
Okay.
Well, okay,
So we won't know the percentage of the interest rate on it. We won't know the percent of the betterment.
That's not correct.
And we won't know the cost.
That's not correct. I believe the special legislation will pass before town meeting so
Right.
that the range of options will be there. We are creating a whole bank of information to provide the selectmen so that they can begin to sort through these various choices and start to make their choices. And so the idea of waiting is the actual opposite of what we really need to be doing. We may not be ready by April, but my sense of this town is when it begins to focus on something, the conversations take place and a consensus is developed. And this is a key piece to that.
Virginia,
All
could
right.
I just make a comment? I mean, I've been on a town meeting member for over 25 years. And my experience is the town meeting wants to know what they're voting on. They're going to want to know what their contribution to the betterment process is going to be. And certainly the electorate in May is going to want to know that. So we need, and this is why the selectmen have pressured us to come up with this so they can make a decision before town meeting
Right.
as to what percentage is going to be better.
Right.
And I think it's absolutely critical that that gets done before town meeting.
Right. We have a document in front of us that we've been running through page by page with corrections. And does anybody else have any other corrections? I appreciate there may be a motion later to skip the whole thing, but let's go through any other corrections to be, or additions to be made to this document.
Yeah, I've got two little suggestions on number 11. One is really nitpicking, but I think it might avoid confusion when you're showing slides. You get up to number 11, and then in the same offset and typeface,
I agree with you.
change 1, 2, 3 to A,
The
B,
numbers.
C. Or
Yeah, that's right.
You are right.
I noticed that. I completely agree.
Yep. Number 1, 2, and 3 should be different.
The other
ABC.
is a little more substantive. You didn't do anything wrong. You used exactly the technically correct word, the betterment hearing. But I think that's a terrible choice of words, because a hearing implies to me that the people in charge are listening. I mean, that's what the word hearing means. And I'm not putting them down personally.
No, I understand.
I looked into it, and a better word for it would be a formal announcement.
No. Betterment hearing is required by law.
It's a
Right.
legal,
You can
it's a
define
legal term.
hearing any way you want,
Right.
but it's
Yeah, that's
defined by,
right. That's what
it's
I
a
said.
hearing.
The word is correct, but it's misleading.
The law is misleading.
There are other kinds of hearings.
Not the first time.
Won't be the last.
Somehow to get across the idea that there's no chance to change it at that point by the public, is there?
Well,
It's,
as it says here, each property owner is notified by certified mail. All right. The engineers have made a certifiable plan that can be filed at the registry. And they will have used the best estimate of their costs at that point and divided it by the sewer equivalent units, so that each property owner knows what the maximum is that they might pay for betterment. The significance of the betterment hearing is that the number that is in that certified mail and that is at that hearing is the maximum that they will pay. The project is then constructed, and once the actual costs are known, then the assessors certify the amount that the homeowners will pay. The actual costs may be less, in which case the actual betterment will be less, but if it turns out the actual costs are greater, the homeowner does not pay anything more than was on that certified mail. That is the maximum. And it is just terribly important for property owners to know in the future what they're going to pay. It's just human nature.
right, I just think, I just want to bend over backwards, to be honest to people. And if you could call it a betterment hearing, but somehow point out that it's a formal announcement.
Okay, what would you like to call it?
It's a vote by the selectmen.
Well,
It's not an announcement, it's a deliberative process. The selectmen will probably weigh in. What do we think the
You
minimum
could say,
betterment
and
should
the
be?
exact
10,000,
amount-
5,000?
let's do
And
something with this word.
The exact amount will be formally announced at a betterment hearing.
It precedes
Say
what
it
I
a
don't
again.
feel
hearing
that
is for.
strongly about this.
Precedes what a hearing
I'm
told me
glad you
to
don't,
go.
because it comes out of Mass General laws. And I think at this point,
Yes.
we're
We're stuck.
we got her stuck with the word.
Right.
Can I just go back to the 1, 2, 3 versus ABC? The
Yes.
reason it got changed from, it went 11, because it says there are 3 key components to
Right.
calculating a betterment.
Right.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 3 key components. And if you go ABC, then you're looking at letters and not 3 key components.
We'll make
No,
those ABC too.
I would do that, but I think that
Most people can know that ABC is 3 letters.
Why don't we,
okay.
Everything
I'm
else
just
is
saying.
just bullet points.
why don't we trust you to put this in a format that is not confusing?
I'm going to ABC.
But,
ABC?
But I like 1, 2, 3
but
better.
everything else is just a simple bullet point, no ABC or 1, 2,
Okay, how about just
Okay,
bullets?
bullets.
Just bullets. Just bullets.
There you go.
Sold.
Steve, are you okay? Bullets, bullets,
All right.
bullets.
Okay.
Any other proposed changes?
I'll tell you how to do that.
Any other significant proposed changes? Mr. Mullin.
First, as a non-member of the committee, I'd like to congratulate you for the amount of work that was done here. And I would suggest one thing. I think when this goes to the selectmen and to the town meeting and everything, they're gonna flip through the pages and get to this table where the dollar signs are.
Yes.
And that's where I think it's a little bit misleading, because you say total load per SEU.
Right.
And then it has $6,406 and each of those numbers. I think you should put an asterisk next to each of those numbers, and then down below say plus $2,500 to $4,000 for hookup.
Well, that's sort of what we did in the, that's sort of what we did in the first 3 pages.
Oh,
I mean, that's what we did in the first few pages.
Well, there's one line in there.
Well,
where it says what the hookup is.
The whole thing about number 7 is all about that.
okay, but I see his point.
is that-
We haven't taken the table that's in 7 and the table that's in 11
and combine them.
to
Okay.
from the, for the,
Okay.
Because then when you show paid over 30 years, which is like I say,
right,
concern,
okay.
it's misleading to say $214 a year. Because that figure.
Well, it's a walk.
Right.
6,400 could actually be 10,000.
Right.
So
My dilemma was that there's another step. That I thought about putting things together, but because we haven't chosen which percentage, and the selectmen made it clear that they wanted information, but they didn't want us to choose the percentage, it was a little hard to add the cost. But I think qualitatively, as a sentence, we could say, more or less as our final statement, in addition to the betterment, there will be the costs that are on table 7.
Well, once the selectmen have picked a percentage,
Then
we could then prepare the table you're talking about.
which would be something for town meeting to look at.
For town meeting, right.
Yeah.
But Virginia,
Yeah.
we could simply put a little asterisk besides those 2 columns, those numbers, and a little footnote saying, plus the annual costs.
Okay. Want to do that?
Okay.
Everybody good
What
with that?
about the avoided costs, though? Because
No,
Well, then you get.
No.
Just let it be.
Right.
We're getting
Okay, so you're saying the column that says annual cost paid over 30 years and one over 20 years.
just put a little star down
little
each one of those.
Yep.
And then just say plus.
Yeah.
Does
But you
not
have to
Plus
be
the-
very careful how you word that. I mean, I hear his point, but you can very easily fall on the other side of confusion in several different ways.
Right. Well, it's a good point, and it'll certainly be in the public domain.
I just, we have a lot of real estate back here, free land back here, last page. And I'm just wondering if we should just do one, you've got one table here with 0%. You want a 2%, do you want a 5%?
No.
No, it makes no sense, because this
But it's
is,
possible.
John,
Anything's possible,
And-
we understand that. But
Not
it makes,
anything, not anything.
title,
it makes,
It might not get voted, it might be
not
0.
down each number.
yeah,
So we'll look
the point of this
back.
exercise is to reduce the options to the
So I'm gonna
most
put it
likely
here
ones to the best of our ability,
here.
not to put everything under the sun out there and let them guess
Yeah.
at it.
But for some
You okay with
reason,
that?
the special legislation was changed. It originally had 0% for the betterment, and then for some reason, I don't know where it came from, it was
But
changed.
you were
0 to
here when that
2%.
happened, and you may not remember, but it was done for good reason, and it's been done, so we can't revisit that.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is that 2% is a reality.
All right. We have this document that, has anybody got any more additions, aside from adding a whole new page of stuff, which I don't think we want to even contemplate? Any other changes to be suggested on this before we adopt them or not?
I don't know whether this is a change to suggest to it or a clarification
Or what is it?
of how betterments are actually assigned. It is the assumption made in this town that a betterment is assigned strictly, when you actually go to the betterment itself and actually go to that hearing and tell people how much they're going to have for betterment, that the betterment is going to be assigned on the basis of whether they are a unit, or is it going to have anything to do with the size of the property, either the frontage or the
No.
square footage or the value of the property?
No.
Is anything
The
about
state
that?
law would have allowed us to do it based on frontage. It made no sense to
No,
anybody.
it makes no sense.
Made
on
no
frontage.
sense, so we chose not to do that.
Right.
There were no other options.
There are no other options. Oh, okay.
So here we are.
So either units or frontage, that's it.
Right.
Well, there are, I mean, Provincetown did it on bedrooms.
yeah.
but-
Well, if you want a
That's a unit.
special act, which we have not contemplated,
That's
Right.
a unit.
we're dealing with the state law as it is in this
Okay.
in this particular factor.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify.
Right.
what
Yeah,
it
and
was.
we had our own idea some time ago about doing it based on assessed value.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we found that that would be cumbersome, unlikely to be passed by the legislature, and we dropped it.
Oh, okay. All right, so that was not even allowed unless you had a special.
Not even allowed,
Right.
absolutely not. And I can pretty well guess the legislature wouldn't have done it for us.
I remember now we did have
Okay,
that.
any
discussion.
other additions or corrections to be proposed in this language? All right then. First page, there were none, right?
Right.
Second page, we had the third bullet on question 1, where up to 30 years came out and of the betterment went in. Am I right?
At once or over the time of the betterment.
Or over the
Yeah.
time of the betterment.
Okay.
Yep. And down at the
Section-
bottom,
Section 3, we had controllable nitrogen.
that's correct.
And,
Good night, thank you.
hey, good night, thank you.
You're doing great work.
Kurt, we're still here?
Oh my God. Okay, the last line.
It's going to say owner occupied resident.
Principal resident.
Oh, let's get it right.
Okay.
Owner,
I don't think you need
Rents, all right, owner
principal
occupied
because it's
resident.
owner occupied. Owner occupied
occupied
resident
resident.
over 65.
Yep.
okay, so that's that page. Everyone in favor?
I'm just,
Can I get a
you
motion?
may want to have primary,
Primary?
because that is a legal definition too, I'm pretty sure. I mean, you can have an owner-occupied second home, but
That's true.
it's got to be the
Okay,
primary.
so what should it be now?
Owner-occupied primary residence.
Instead of principal.
Use the same-
Primary residence.
Okay.
Excuse me, why not just use the same language as bullet 3, over age 65, attached to it?
Owner occupied
You
principal.
say homeowner, so that defines it to be the owner.
They have to be the primary, have to be
It's
primary.
not principal, I don't know where principal
I think
came from.
primary is a much
It's
better-
primary
Primary
residence.
Much
resident.
better than principal.
Primary, okay.
All right.
Okay, so principal should come out and primary should go in?
Primary.
Yes.
That's the
That,
standard.
that does the better thing.
Yeah,
Principal residence almost means,
Yeah.
you have a couple of residents.
okay. Owner occupied primary
Mid-rounding.
residences. Okay, over 65.
All right, so we're okay. Can I get a motion to accept that page as amended? Made,
I think we're going to do
seconded?
the whole thing, right?
We're going to go page by page.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Motion made and seconded to adopt this page 2 with the changes we've just laid out. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Got it. Page 3. Number 5, benefits of town. All right. No fish kills, odor reduction.
Right.
Insert odor reduction. We take out increased property values in the area and we replace it with potential for
Property value improvements.
Okay, that's that change. Moving on down to number 7. We get the reversing the plumbing followed by electrical panel.
Et cetera.
Any other changes on that page? Okay, motion to accept that page. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Page 4. We had something.
Page 4,
You wanted to put the 8% in?
We wanted to put the 8%.
yes,
in
and
third
Mass
bullet.
General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 41A was somehow not included when the red bullet was written.
No, it wasn't.
That
Well,
needs to be
okay.
back in.
No, well, there's a reason. The under Mass General Laws 59.541A does not refer to deferral of betterments. It refers to deferral of property taxes.
Property taxes.
So it should be
There are
out.
2 laws.
It should be out.
I see,
And we're just
okay.
saying Massachusetts law
So
because.
in this case, the red is what we're adopting and not the black.
Okay,
I know,
good
it's
enough.
just law.
Okay, and but we're adding 8%.
Okay. but
Where?
Just one point on the 8%. The actual wording in the law, although I don't have a photographic memory, it says 8%, something effective 8% or what is determined by the local government, blah, blah, blah. something like
That's
that.
true. There was some local option involved.
Right.
Can we leave it then to just other criteria may apply,
Yeah.
also apply? Rather than get into the
Since it's
details?
not a fixed number,
Yeah.
Well, it says 8%
Or-
unless it's changed.
What do we choose? What do we
I
do?
think Trish advised that it was 8% too, right?
Yeah, she did. I think she went with the 8%.
What have we been charging?
8%, I
Why
presume.
don't we just,
Few
why don't we
people
just
get
put the interest is 8% at death or inheritance?
Okay. Is that
Or
better
sale.
than?
no.
Or sale.
Or sale. Yeah.
Transfer
Can we get it?
to another world.
Yeah. How do you want to get the 8% in
No,
here?
not death.
We're not going to rewrite the whole
No,
paragraph.
it's
Let's
just
do
let-
8%.
Just change
Transfer.
other criteria
Property
also
transfer.
applies, say 8% interest and other criteria also apply.
Great.
Fine.
Okay,
Okay.
By the way, I object to over 65 being described as elderly.
Me too.
Most people in this room would. All right.
In the first bullet, did we add homeowners and renters over 65?
Well, we're not, the whole topic is what help is available to low-income homeowners. We don't,
Okay.
the renters are, I'm glad they have a benefit, but they don't gain in this instance,
Yeah.
in our
Okay.
Right.
case.
Okay, the betterment.
Number 10, assumptions. The Board of Selectmen will exercise the options set forth in the special act. We had some change to that.
Will exercise options such as the 0% interest rate
Allowed by the special act.
allowed by the special act.
0
Right.
to 2%.
Well,
You want them to exercise 0. Don't offer them 2.
No, we're not.
No, but that's what it says.
Understood. 0 to 2. 0 is encompassed within 0 to 2.
Right, and that's the
Yeah, but
assumption.
that's-
The
that's
assumption
the
is that they'll
deception.
exercise 0%.
No, it's not a
0
deception.
to 2%, within the law, the special legislation, it says 0 to 2%.
It's up to 2%.
Give me language on that particular sentence, and we'll move
We're
on.
basing our figures
Will
on.
exercise options such as the 0% allowed by the special act.
Okay, is that the language?
Well, it says 0 to 2% in the special
But,
act.
They could, but we're
Steve's
assuming.
offering language that covers the situation, so.
Yeah.
Unless you have a different one to offer, make it as a motion and we'll deal with it. But otherwise,
Okay, I'll make a motion then. I think
Okay.
it should better reflect the special act, and it should say, as it says, that the will pass the special act. Let's see. Will exercise options allowed by the special act, and limit interest, or set interest rates at 0 to 2%.
Should be up to 2%.
okay,
Not that I
that's
like
a
it,
motion.
but-
I don't hear a second. Do I hear a second? Thank you.
Oh.
All right. So we've got it
It would,
the way Steve had it, which was 0, right?
yes.
Okay.
whatever we do, it would be
Okay.
more important to say, at the very end, where you have the table, total average annual is based on water usage, you may be documented, and a 0% interest rate.
Which page are you on?
On the last page.
Oh, we're not- we're
Page
not-
3
We're
of
not,
5.
we're not
We're
there
not on
yet.
the last page.
We're not there yet.
On page 3 of 5, okay.
Okay, we're on page 4.
Yeah, I saw it on
Okay,
page
so-
3 here. Well, okay.
Well, let's one page at a
Page
time.
6
all right?
is where I wanted.
Okay, so
Okay, we got it.
We know,
Sorry.
everybody's got the amendments that are on the table for page 4 that include what we've just described and the red replacing the black. Okay. A motion to accept that page
So moved.
as amended.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 1 no.
One no.
No.
Fair enough. Page 5. We have dots instead of numbers. Any other changes on that page? Motion to,
There was one.
What?
The asterisk, we were gonna, John's,
In the chart.
in the chart.
Mhm.
I'm just reminding you, if the
Okay.
committee wants to do it, that you talked about putting an asterisk and then having a note that says, does not include cost of hookup.
No,
It
no,
doesn't-
hookup,
it
it covers
doesn't-
annual costs. 'Cause
Does
it-
not include, okay, well, that's why I'm annual, does not include annual
Maintenance.
costs.
Well, how about just the cost shown in table 7, or however
Yeah,
you
yeah,
want
that's
to call
good.
All right,
that
Refer-
and-
table?
refer
and
to
can
table
I-
7.
Yeah, well,
Because
let's,
that has the avoided costs too.
That's
Yes.
good.
There's so many
Right.
different
Yep,
assumptions you
exactly.
can
Right.
make in there,
Right.
that there's no way you can pick a single number
Good
from
point.
it. and put
so
it
can
here.
I make, I'm gonna call this table 7 now.
Yes.
Put a little title on it, call it table 7. And call this in table 11.
Okay.
But what I was going to suggest is add to these numbers the costs from, and avoided costs from table 7 for the total cost to the homeowner. But, or you could just say see table 7.
Yes,
I think at this point, we'll
It's
just
just-
say, does not include costs listed in table 7.
right. That sound good?
I have one other suggestion. On the capital cost component, what it doesn't say is that is for the Little Pond Sewer Service Area collection system.
Okay, you want to add the word collection system after Little Pond Sewer Service Area?
And then $41 million.
Okay.
Right,
It's a
right.
little service
Right.
project, because of the collection system, you get lift stations, you get transport.
That's right.
The 41 million is for the little,
And let's spell out SSA. So it'll
Yeah.
say Little Pond Sewer Service
like
Area
Steamship
Collection
Authority.
System.
System. Okay.
You were going to let, I heard somebody say, let's see if figure out how to do that with the ABC or the dots or something
She was
after,
gonna do dots.
which is fine with me.
Yep.
But if you're freezing it now, I have a suggestion on how to do it, or else you can just tell C after.
Oh, come on.
If
let's
it's
move on.
typographical, let's
Come on.
just
Fine,
go with the flow
good.
here. It's past Matt's bedtime and mine too.
Yeah. You're going to be carrying me out of here.
This page, any other additions or corrections? A motion?
So moved.
Second
Second?
for discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
You got it. Okay, we'll make these changes, and thanks
No,
very much.
I'm
What else?
voting no on that last one.
We got, oh, there was a no on that from,
Page 5.
okay. Quick now, three more things on the agenda. Discussion and vote on the S-Mass draft historical data report, which was all sent around to you twice now. Any discussion or on that? Basically, we're just accepting it.
Yes. Thank you, finally.
Comments were made and incorporated, so it's done.
Right.
Ron?
No, I just have a question about, do we need to vote on the whole document, or do we just vote on the pages?
I don't care. You want to vote in the whole document? Is that a motion?
The other question, I guess, is
What?
in what form do we send this to the selectmen? I mean, are we sending them a document to act upon?
Yes. They're going to have it, and they're going to take it up Monday night. And Virginia is going to be there to make a presentation of what's in it Monday night, very similar to the one she gave us tonight.
Right. This document is clearly the work of the working group and then the input from the committee. So it represents the facts as we want to present them to the town. It will go to the selectmen like this.
And good point is Ron made, which is we didn't adopt the whole thing. We adopted each individual page. Can I get a motion to adopt the whole thing? Moved and seconded to adopt the whole thing. Discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
Was that a hand up there? Was that a yes?
No, I didn't
On
get,
adopting the whole thing?
don't we have a discussion at this point?
Well, we asked for it. We've had one for the last 2 hours.
It's a big deal. This is
we
important.
understand.
It's going to impact a lot of people.
The gentleman to your right is going to be pretty cross.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, I'd just like to make a motion, and I'd just like to say, based on the uncertainties over betterment, the betterment percentage, interest rates, and other pertinent costs to homeowners and businesses, I move that the WQMC Water Quality Management Committee postpone its vote on the betterment document until the actual cost for the sewer equivalent unit is known, and recommend that the Water Quality Management Committee recommended that the Board of Selectmen vote indefinite postponement on the spring 2014 town meeting warrant, Article 27.
All right, so that's by way of a further amendment that would obviate the earlier proposed amendment. Okay,
Right,
so we'll
right.
take up his further amendment. Discussion on the further amendment? Is there a second for the further amendment? No, okay.
I'll
Further
second for the sake of
Okay, you want
discussion.
to stay and discuss it, okay. So,
It's not what the selectmen asked us to do. We're their advisory, I think they want this advice.
That's
okay.
right.
Okay.
Actually, the motion comes down to defer it.
Any other discussion?
The only thing is, I just want to make it really clear that we are, that this is a very complicated issue, and one that the working group has paid a lot of attention to and done enormous work on. But I think that the unknowns that still exist make it difficult to proceed in a way that can lead to setting the sewer, the betterment percentage and cost. And that we need to know more about percentages of the betterment, percent interest to be charged on it, as well as what the term of payment and the actual capital investment that would be used. So that's the main reason for this. I think that we could be moving something ahead that has tremendous uncertainty at this point.
Okay. Further discussion?
Well, I think both Virginia and I made the point earlier in the meeting precisely why we do need to move this forward, and I
Okay.
don't think we need to have that discussion again.
No.
Okay, further discussion over. All in favor of the motion to adopt this document and forward it to the selectmen for their meeting Monday night, say aye. Aye.
What are we voting
What
on?
are we voting on?
Yeah.
The amendment
Two.
or-
No, the amendment went
I'll
down.
take it.
The amendment went down, did it not? Okay, sorry.
No, there's
Okay,
a second
the
on
amendment
it.
is not. And it was seconded, you're right. Okay, so the motion is on the vote is on
his
the
and
further amendment, which was Ron's,
Yeah.
to defer any action at all.
Right.
Okay, no more discussion on that?
Wait, that isn't,
Well, you made the motion and it's on the record. I think we're
right,
about there.
okay.
Any further discussion on that?
Point of information. What happens if we voted Ron's motion in, if we voted to do Ron's motion? What happens then to the article which has been put forward in the selectmen to put to
Well, the article will be
Article for
taken
the
up at the
betterment,
town
yeah.
meeting. It will just be taken up without our input, at least
Yeah.
on Monday night.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think it's.
further discussion? All in favor of Ron's motion to defer action, signify by putting the hand up. Okay, 1. All opposed? Others? Okay. The original motion to adopt this document as a whole and bring it to the selectmen Monday night, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
A nay.
One
A nay. 1 nay. Okay, fine, we're done. Report from members and staff. I doubt that we're going to have many. Review and vote the minutes of the prior meeting.
I have 3 one-sentence statements.
Okay.
Okay. One is I sent out something on, Ally was here last week, Ally Olmsted was here 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
I talked with her and I sent out a statement of what she would like to be doing, and I have invited her to suggest to people, to go to people, and to anybody also here to go to her. I think she's a good person to have on board, and I look at what I sent out this afternoon.
Great.
Second, on March 8th, there will be a forum in Herman Library at March 8th. That's a Saturday morning, from 9:30 until 12. There will be a forum on the question of economic justice or environmental justice, or whatever you want to call it, and the CWMP and what's going on with the CWMP. There'll be a forum which has been, there's an ad hoc committee which was created out of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship's education committee, and they're doing this. I just want to announce that it's happening.
Good.
What time is it?
Time it'll be from 9:30 until 12, and Virginia Valiala has been invited to participate as a participant on that committee, and she's just,
Right. And I would encourage everyone on the committee to go. I think it would be a good opportunity, since we all know a lot more than we used to about the economics of all this.
Ron and Virginia both have been invited to
Terrific.
be speakers at that.
Terrific.
Now,
on the other hand,
if we have a representative,
more than 3 of us go, we have a problem.
No, I don't think so. This is a public forum.
Someone else's meeting.
It's
Okay.
someone else's meeting.
I warned them
Plus,
about that.
we're
I
not
warned them we
deliberating.
couldn't have a discussion with 3
We're not
people.
making
No
decisions.
Right,
Yeah.
fine.
We couldn't have 3 people talking, I guess, on it, or 4
Well,
people talking.
don't worry about that
Okay.
because you're not.
No,
Okay.
Good.
Anyway.
All right. You
The
have another one?
third one is, I just wanted to mention, remind everybody that the 208, there's a 208 meeting on the 25th. You probably got a notice of this, on the Upper Cape,
It's in Mashpee.
in Mashpee, at the place it's always been, on the whole Upper Cape. I have put myself in to go to that. I don't know whether anyone else has. I don't know whether, I don't know how they're going to choose who actually participates in it or not, but I'm going.
Okay.
So that's all.
Great. Any other reports from members or staff?
Did you vote the historical report?
What?
The SMAS report?
Yep.
Okay,
You accept it?
Yep, we did.
great.
Any other reports from members and staff?
Just a note that we did have a aquaculture demonstration project working group discussion on Tuesday, and it was very, very productive, and got some feedback from the group that was there. And I think it feels like, as we said earlier, that things are moving well and there's good support.
Okay. Before we vote on the minutes of the prior meeting, I want to make another announcement that I don't think is going to be a surprise to anyone in the room, but one of our members has decided he wants to lose all of his common sense and go back to the legislature. I can't think of anyone better.
Well, I want to
represent
catch up
this
with the
town,
number of
and
years you put
I
in
would
here.
recommend a round of applause for Matt Patrick.
Please hold your applause until after the race, I think.
But send checks.
Send money.
Send your firstborn child and
Really. Minutes of the prior meeting. Any additions or corrections? Everybody got a copy? I'm sure you.
Move the minutes of February 6th.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Matt, we'd like a motion from you.
I move adjournment, Mr.
Second.
Chairman.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.